and gentlemen, we'll get our first part of this meeting started, starting at 6 o'clock. It'll just be a informational meeting from Executive Director of the St. Joe County 911 Center, PSAP Center, Ray Schultz. So I will turn it over to you.
Good evening. I guess Ray Schultz, Executive Director of PSAP, office at 58266 Downey Avenue in Mishawaka. Always like coming and presenting to you guys and kind of giving you the kind of behind the scenes stuff. Although you guys have been flooded with information from PSAP over the last 6 or 8 months as the guys went through adopting the new funding mechanism. The budget I'm going to show you was the budget that I was directed to put together. That included a bunch of staffing changes because with the changing of the LIT funding mechanism, we had to grow now. If they would have done the LIT changes and made all that without adjusting the staffing, then the number is set and substantial growth is limited to whatever the growth formula is. So versus being, well, 1% or 2% maybe increase, or maybe it's even a decrease year to year. It's hard to functionally put together a long-term plan and budget that way. Over the years since 2014, there have been several staffing studies that have been put together by various agencies that said what staffing levels that PSAP should be. And we've always, since the inception, there's been an understaffing really of what was needed. So when they asked when President Dieter, President of the Executive Board, Commissioner Dieter, when he directed the budget to be put together based upon those staffing formulas that we've gotten over time, what you have before you is that. So there's really two substantial changes to the budget from 21 to 22. Increase in staffing and employee raises and benefits. So we went, the budget that we put together has a full-time employee addition of 10 dispatchers, taking us to 83 full-time dispatch positions. The reason why it's important to get there, I guess there's several reasons. One of them is for flexibility operationally. Your police chief and fire chief are come to me regularly for requests to do things differently, like have their own dispatcher, have their own talk group, do other administrative functions that we quite frankly don't have the people for. At the end of this, we should be able to have some more functional ability to make those special requests happen. And it's that way for all police chiefs and fire chiefs. I mean, I get requests regularly to do more stuff, and the standard answer is not right now. Right, not until we can get some additional people in here, get them trained, and get to where we need to be. So we did that. So it'll be kind of there's never a reduction in overtime. We'll kind of cover that at the very end, but it's never a one-for-one. We did increase the support staff because in order for our folks to provide the best quality of customer service, we have to support them and update technology and give them the tools they need to do that. So there's some increased specialty positions in there. That's actually, it goes from 9 to 13, but there's an extra IT position. We only have one IT person, and we're a very tech dependent organization. We have some pretty expensive tech and a lot of it. So we needed to get some help there. We needed some help in quality assurance. So we're next month, or the 1st of November actually, we're getting ready to launch some new software that's going to help our police calls, our police intake procedure. So right now, fire and EMS go through a very scripted, very standard intake procedure. In police, we do not do that. We will do that for police starting in November. And what we're looking for to achieve there is a standard outcome. We want no matter who calls in, where they live, what they want, everybody gets the same level of service, and we want that service to be at the best possible we can provide. So we've been doing a lot of training. We bought new software. We're doing a lot of training. There's going to be more auditing then of the calls. So right now, a very small number of calls get audited every month, like 100. And then but that's almost going to double because 83% of our business is police. So we're not even listening to 83% of our calls for quality assurance purposes. We don't have a standard. We don't have a standard to judge off of. We don't have. There's no software we can build for it. We have to have some defined standards to meet, and we'll be able to start listening to those calls and making sure that those are getting the best quality service. We need somebody else in the GIS department. Because of the CAD that we purchased, we went to Motorola CAD a couple years ago. Because of that, all of our commonplaces, all of our businesses are all managed by the GIS department. They're all a spot on a map. And we are very dependent upon that. So for instance, you know how often businesses change names and owners, and some go out of business, and some get, nobody really, when you go shopping, you don't know the address to Meijer. Or when you say you're at Martin's, okay, which one? So we don't have a common name for Gucci Martin's, right? I mean, that's how everybody refers to it, but we don't have a common place for that. So we have to make sure that we have every business in the entire county in CAD. That is a huge task. So we need somebody to handle that. That's a full-time job.
Ray, if I could just ask you a quick question. I
Yep.
think the last time we had spoke, you'd mentioned regarding the same issue, that there were some multiple or duplicate addresses, going around the county or throughout the county. Has that been cleaned up, or how have we addressed that?
So it is. So if you put in McDonald's, you get a drop-down list of all the McDonald's that lives in the whole county. If you put in 123 Main Street, you get a list of 123 Main Street, everyone in Mishawaka, South Bend, the county, Elkhart County, LaPorte County. You get them all, because our responders go outside of
Sure.
our jurisdictions a lot, right? So we put in everybody's GIS. So that is absolutely working. It's worth the price tag just for that.
Great.
That has been very, 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 very good, and continues to improve all the time as we find address points that need to be added in. So no, that part of the software is working absolutely as we expected.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
It's very, very good. Commissioner Dieter asked for a PIO. We have somebody that is like labeled a PIO, but he's responsible for pulling audio tapes for every prosecution that goes through St. Joe County. So every time a case goes to court during the investigation, they pull the 911 tape and all of the radio traffic for those calls. That is a lot. There's like probably 20 a day that come through where we're pulling tapes and going through and listening to stuff. So he doesn't have time to deal like with the media or press releases or any of that stuff. So the commissioner thought that we're big enough now, we're pretty busy, we can utilize a PIO to kind of handle some of our communication issues. So that was put in and passed. Preliminary passed, I should say. We went through, every year through our collective bargaining agreement, there's a wage opener. So we went through, and coincidentally, when we were going through wage negotiations, we had a few folks that left and put us into what was a pretty tenuous staffing issue, into a full-blown staffing crisis. Our union did an amazing job of going out and contacting all of the neighboring 911 centers. I was fortunate enough to receive a quasi-study from 911 directors from throughout the whole state. And at the end of the day, what came out of that is we're the 5th largest county in the state, and our dispatchers were paid in the bottom 5%. So we were struggling with, that was one of the reasons why we were struggling with getting folks in the door and retaining them, is because they could go anywhere else around us, have drastically less work. And because we're one of the busiest PSAPs in the state. So you can go to Elkhart, LaPorte, Notre Dame, Walkerton, and make more money to do a lot less work. So they put together that proposal. We have a part of our collective bargaining agreement is shift bids. So all of our senior folks end up on first shift. Second shift is our busiest by far, and it's where all of our brand new people and most of our violent crime happens. So I don't know if you can understand where the train's going there, but newest, less experienced people, busiest, most high acuity calls. They learn a lot, and they get baptized by fire pretty quick, but So we passed an increase to the shift differential. It went from 25 cents an hour to $2 an hour. And that was based upon trying to, number one, rewarding the folks that are working those shifts for being like super busy and trying to get maybe some of our older folks to stay on those other shifts. Yeah.
Ray, just a quick question. As far as your, your turnover, do you know what percentage of turnover your employees went from our dispatch center to other dispatch centers versus they just said, you know, this career is not for me?
So in the last 6 years, or last 5 years, and this includes brand new people, so we've had 57 folks that were hired and are no longer employed. That's a lot, right? You're talking about half your workforce. 2 of them have went to work for other dispatch centers.
Okay.
One went to Notre Dame, one went to, moved back to Ohio and started dispatching in
So
Ohio.
what you're saying is the people are leaving, but it doesn't appear to be it's for money.
No, they're going to work, they're going to work at other jobs making a similar salary with no nights, no weekends, no holidays, no third shift, no missing kids' games, and no giving, CPR instructions to a mom on the phone. I mean, there's a lot less stress involved too, so. But you're right, what I feel like what we were missing out is getting folks in the door. Is that, we have our folks working in a super complex environment where you have, I don't know, I use this analogy and it might mean something to you guys now because of everything you're going through now, but I need 73 or 83 lead paramedics. They're highly skilled. There's not very many of them. And when they're called to act, they have to perform at a very high level. I don't have any play. When they're right out of training and they're working independently, it's like putting them in the battalion chief's car in the fire department. They're making decisions, they're going through stuff, and they're brand new. So we need to have highly educated, intelligent, competent people walking in the door to take these very professional jobs. And we weren't paying them that way. It's just it's been underpaid, and it's historically across the country it's underpaid. So we had to boost the pay up to get folks in the door, especially in the environment that we live in today with the lack of available workers. I mean, we're not getting a lot of folks walking in the door. So to address that, to address this, the county council, and I tell you what, I'll give them a heck of a credit because this is mostly their idea. And I threw like 10 ideas at them because I'm just walking around the Riverwalk every morning trying to figure out what to do next. And I had a few ideas and I put them on paper and sent it to them and kind of did a hybrid, and they said, well, we need to keep the people that we have because, they're incredibly valuable. We put a lot of time and energy into training them, and we don't want them to leave to go work someplace else. And the union put together a proposal, this question survey that said, hey, what would it take for you to leave? What kind of money would you look for to leave? And this is kind of a product of that. So for every hour that my folks work, they get a quarterly retention bonus to remain employed. So if you're new, 1 to 5 years or 0 to 4 years, you get $1 an hour for every hour you work. Straight time, overtime, every hour. You're getting a check every 4 months or every 3 months. So all the way down to our most experienced folks, our 20-year employees, they're getting $5 an hour for every hour they work to stay, because we can't replace that kind of knowledge and those abilities when they walk out the door. We're taking 20 years or 25 years of experience and replacing them with a brand new person. You can't recreate all of that stuff in that short amount of time. So, went to bat, and they rose up with this retention bonus, and I think I'm knock on wood, I think it's going to have some pretty long-term positive effects, on the turnover. My first couple years, we had single-digit turnovers. A couple people here or there, retirement. We lost a bunch during COVID. Some folks retired. Some trainees didn't make it. Some folks took their talents elsewhere. And then we had a hard time replacing them because we couldn't test, we couldn't interview. It's one-on-one peer training, so you can't do that because you have to have 6 foot of social distance. There was no vaccine available, so everybody was high risk. Everything was locked down. You couldn't orient them because County City building was closed and HR was working from home, so you couldn't go through orientation. It put us 6 months behind in hiring. Well, 6 months turns into a year like that. because it takes 6 months to create a dispatcher. So now you're talking to being a year behind, so, folks. So we've got a lot of brand new folks. They've been, we hired in June, middle of June, June 15th of 2020, we started bringing in classes of 6, 7 folks. And we've continued that every 12 weeks, 13 weeks, to try to replenish. So we have 8 open, as of today, we offered 6 jobs, 5 people accepted. So as of today on the roster, we're 8 folks short of 73. Obviously, they're not all working, they're not all trained, they're not working independently. I've got 20 folks in some various stage of training. Some are working independently as police and, or as call takers and fire dispatchers. Some are training as police. Some are training as fire dispatchers and call takers. So we have a hybrid system. And the good news is that one of the things the county did for us is I asked for and they approved a training coordinator position in mid-year, which mid-year training, you know how mid-year hirings go, right? And I was fortunate, and so the folks that were hired right after we got a full-time training manager graduated or got moved 2 weeks early. So 2 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, except it's 2 weeks of salary times 20 openings. It doesn't take a lot to make a real budget impact, just cutting off, weeks and days of training where we can recoup that salary by doing that. So that's been very fortunate, and so far so good.
Right.
So.
Since the state required that we have a combined call center, including South Bend County and Mishawaka, I don't know whether that has worked out the way they thought it would. I think it's causing some more headaches than what it was when each entity had their own call center.
I'm not going to argue that with you.
I'm not actually arguing, I'm just asking.
I'm not going to, I guess what I'm saying is that I can understand you. I see your viewpoint, and I quasi-agree with you. There's no question that if you have folks that work just for you, that the level of service that you get is going to be better because they're only working for you. When you start making them work for everybody else at the same time, it is impossible to get the same level of service, especially when you had 57% turnover in the first year. You lost hundreds of years of seniority in the very first year, well before Ray, when this was all going down. So I can tell you, I've been a part of 3 mergers in my public safety life, and all 3 of them have had substantial issues. It took a long time that once the consolidation happened, and merging happened, it took a long time to hammer out all of the shortcomings created by that. And you guys are still dealing with that today. And we are definitely dealing with that today as well. So we're making up for decisions that were made in 2014 that are very expensive.
Are we getting the service that we deserve by having the combined PSAP compared to Mishawaka having their own? And are we having the errors, more errors by combining the 3 entities compared to having each entity have their own?
I can tell you that with purchasing the software that we did, our error rate is significantly less, like probably less than 0.1%. It is very low today. It does not, accidents happen, mistakes happen, we're humans. If you had your own center and they are only answering your calls and doing your own thing, chance of sending somebody to the wrong place is 0, right? Because you're only answering your calls. That's not so yeah, would there be less errors if you were doing just you? Yeah.
Would there be less training?
There would be no other option.
Yeah, there'd be less training.
There would be less training. There would be less training because they only have to learn one way to do business. I consistently struggle, especially on one side of the room, with getting consistent policy. Our police agencies struggle with consistent policy. We have 3 big police departments that do things 3 different ways. So that's a struggle because you have to learn all 3 of those. So is it less? It's absolutely less. But as business improves, as it gets busier, as you need more folks, it's easier to manage it this way. It's easier to manage this way, because you're not paying the bill yourself. It's shared amongst everybody. So as to grow, I think, my experience in education says it's easier to grow this way. Will the service get better? The service will get better when our workforce stabilizes. As we're consistently training new people make mistakes. That's how they learn. We really need people to make mistakes so they learn from them. Nobody comes out of the gate. No police officer, no firefighter, nobody from the street department, no utility worker comes out of whatever school they go to being great at their job. We need them to be on the job and get some experience and learn from their mistakes. So, yeah, training would be different. It's expensive though. I mean, running a dispatch center is it takes a lot of resources, I'll tell you that.
Because Ray, would Mishawaka be paying more now, being in this co-op with two other entities,
No.
than they would be their own?
Thanks to the change in the lit formula, no, you guys see a significant savings going forward, right?
Depends what you say is significant.
Okay,
There is a savings.
6 digits, right? Yeah.
Ray, I have a quick question. You know, being a dispatcher takes a special person. It takes a special kind of personality to do that job.
Ma'am.
What is your hiring protocol? Do you have all of your interviewees or applicants go through like an MMPI or some kind of
It's a-
testing that?
We don't do a psychological test. We can talk offline about, to work in the 911 field, it takes a special person, and some of those people are broken. They've used our service, they've been a victim before, they might have some underlying issues that make them really, really good at this job. And we try to support, we have what I feel is a robust support system for mental health, to kind of address that after they get hired. So we don't do the MMPI. I went through that. I don't know that. I passed, so I don't know what that means, but, so what we do is.
You cheated.
That's right, you cheated.
I did cheat, yeah. Same way, I don't know how many Dr. Malini asked me 400 different ways how to do, if I like flowers. I don't know exactly what that was about, but it was 25 years ago and I still remember it, so it made an impression.
Yeah, it stuck with you.
Yeah, might have been more than 25, but, so they apply, we do a very superficial background check. They come in and they do an observation period, so they can see what it is, what a shift is as a 911 dispatcher. We lost several folks that we hired them, and their first week out of the gate, they got in the room, sit in the chair, and like, this is not the job for me, and walked out of the door. Learning from those experiences didn't take us long to figure out we have to do some sort of exposure training to get them to know what they're walking into. So there's an observation period, and then after that, they're great. So application, written exam, background check, observation, interview, observation, job offer. So there's a lot of, it's complicated to hire in today's world.
Right, yeah.
So, and they get a thorough background check in there before a job offer, so. So what you see is the difference in salary is, and you guys got an email about, I can kind of flip over, but you guys got an email from President Hicksonbaugh about the budget and how it looks, but figure out how to,
Ray, while you're flipping over, can I ask you a couple questions?
for sure.
And number one, I apologize for not being with you this evening, but going back to the questions that Woody asked you about service to Mishawaka, and then your earlier comment about the requests that our police chief and fire chief make to you for a dedicated dispatcher, I want to make sure that I understand and we understand how that's going to change the service that Mishawaka receives. I thought I understood you to say that you are now going to be able to meet those requests of our chiefs so that we'd have some dedicated dispatchers, or am I misunderstanding you?
It won't be immediate, depending on how long it takes us to get to that bigger number. I don't know where to look, so I think I'm looking at the camera right there. So,
Sorry.
that's the intent. That is the intent. I'm not going to promise it, but I'm going to tell you that is the goal. That is why that is the presentation I made to the operations board and the executive board. That was part of the presentation. I mean that if we get there, it is my intent to do that, to be able to break those apart.
So if I understand you, then you have to be fully staffed before you're going to have the ability to make that change. Is
Or,
that accurate?
or close. Yeah, we have to
Pretty
get,
close,
I don't know
okay.
what the magic number is. I don't know exactly what the magic number is, but we got to be at least, it's not 100%, but we have to be closer.
Okay. And then, going back to the information you shared with regard to the $1.75 increase for second and third shifts, if the intent there is to try to incentivize your more veteran dispatchers to work those shifts, I guess just out of curiosity, when is your pick a shift process for next year? And how will you be able to gauge and, let us know whether that's had the intended effect?
So we don't have an annual shift bid. It's as there are openings. So like right
Okay.
now, afternoon shift has a lot of openings. And we have not had, so what we have is had day shift bids where people senior folks did not bid into the day shift.
Okay.
So as a rule, I don't know what they're thinking. I know one person said I would be foolish to go to day shift because it's $5 an hour in retention and $2 an hour. 7 times 2,000 is $14,000. So it'd be foolish to take a $14,000 pay cut to go to day shift. That's the intent. I mean, I think that's working.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask you about the raises. And you just and I thought I knew the answer, but you just had give me a question in my mind. So, people are going to receive a 5% increase across the board.
Of course, except for admin.
Okay. $1.75 bonus if you're going to be on second or third, and then longevity. Did I hear you say that longevity could depend on what shift you're on?
It's both. It's combined. So this person has more than 20 years, so she gets the retention. She's on third shift, so she gets the shift
But
differential.
The $1.75
Yeah.
is the only difference, right?
Well,
She would get the 5% if they go to first shift.
True. You're
Okay.
true. Yeah.
All right. I just want to make
No,
sure.
you're right. You're right.
Wanted to make sure I understood.
No, you got it. No, you got it. Yep.
All right. But still, she wanted to, for whatever reason, this
Yeah.
person wanted to retain,
Correct.
make more money.
Yep.
I get it. All right, thank you.
So these are as the budget and these are really the numbers that changed, kind of some big numbers on the right, but we also negotiate, not kind of negotiate is not the right word, but we worked with because we didn't give up anything for it, so we didn't negotiate. We worked with the bargaining group, and instead of having 3 operational ranks, we went to 6
Maybe it needs.
operational ranks. So what that does is escalate them faster through the ranks to get a raise more frequently. So before, where it was TC1, 2, and 3, and it's depending on the job you can do, what we did is we broke all of the jobs down one by one and said after you're hired at one level and then you get through academy, you go become a call taker, okay, now you're getting a raise. Okay, now you're going to fire. As soon as you get done with fire, you get a raise. And then when you go to police and you do the first police channel, you get a raise. When you do the alternate police channel, you get a raise. So that way they went through faster to help them put a little money in their pocket and see some fruits of their labor. Because right as it was, it could be 6 months, a year, 18 months before they saw a substantial increase in pay, even though they were taking on additional responsibilities.
So Ray, a question for you. Now, once a person is fully trained, are they a dispatcher as a dispatcher, or do they dispatch just for police or just for fire?
No, dispatcher's a dispatcher. We have, and it's part of the bargaining agreement, they rotate through, because frankly, it's a fairness thing for the folks that sit and dispatch for South Bend Police. South Bend Police does 100,000 dispatches a year, and Mishawaka Police and St. Joe County Police do not do that combined. So they were taking on they take on a pretty significant workload when they work South Bend Police Channel. So they didn't want the same people having to sit there all the time. The people that are qualified to sit there have to rotate through. It's a cascade effect, and everybody rotates.
Well, I think that's the way you'd want it. It gives you a lot more flexibility.
There's positives, because it's going back to what Woody said, is that if they were just doing Mishawaka Police, then they would be great at just doing Mishawaka Police. The problem is that when they're on vacation, that somebody else has to, and I did this when I was a captain of the fire department, and I had my driver, right? I had a driver assigned to my truck. He was very good at being a driver, because that's what he did. The days that he was on vacation and I had a fill-in driver, guess what? The fill-in driver can't be as good, because that's not his primary, that's not what he does all the time. So, yeah, you rotate people through, and the backup driver then eventually becomes as good as the primary driver, because he's rotating through and getting experience in doing it, so that when the primary guy retires, now the backup guy is ready, and there's another backup guy right behind him, person. So that's the kind of the philosophy here is, yeah, they're not going to be the greatest of the great out of the gate, because they're not doing it very often, but the more often they do it and more exposure they get, the more opportunity we get to build 30 great ones instead of 5 or 6.
So when you're all staffed up and you've got everybody trained in a perfect world, you'll be at 83?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember years ago, when Mayor Buttigieg was in South Bend, he had a couple of his technocrats do a study, and the recommendation was for 99 dispatchers.
Could I use 99? Absolutely. Would I have enough seats for them to sit in? I would absolutely not. There is enough workload for that, because what that takes into account is like on-duty training. So getting folks, being able to take them off the dispatch floor and putting them into a training classroom to give them more educational opportunities. That takes into that account. It completely eliminates overtime. And day off overtime. So there are some opportunities that would give. Now, I would not, if everybody showed up to work, I don't have enough chairs for them to physically sit in. So, yeah, is there a number? There is a number. Are we going to have to work to that eventually? We're going to have to work somewhere close to that eventually. As we get busier, look, as the busier we get, our population went from 250,000 to 274,000. As the population increases, call volume increases, you're going to need more fire stations, and you're going to need more police officers. You're going to need more firefighters. You're going to need another ambulance. I'm going to need more dispatchers. We're going to need more phone lines. We're going to need more radios. They're going to need more of everything. If we're going to grow, then we all have to grow. And that's kind of and we have to have a plan. So this is kind of a culmination of a lot of planning and forecasting to say, okay, I'm going to look at its crystal ball. And I did 10 of these budgets, or 12, because it was different raises and different numbers of people and different forecasting for the future. So I got 12 of these canned up. Takes a little bit of time. But I look at a crystal ball and say, okay, where are we going to be? What's our population going to be in 10 years? Okay, that goes into this formula, because if I come in and ask for you guys for 10 more folks, in 2 years from now, you're going to run me out of town. Heck no, I'm not giving you 10 more people. Why didn't you ask for what you needed along the way? So you got to phase that in. You got to plant the seed. You got to work forward and progress, as you go along. So,
Ray, just out of curiosity, was the dispatch center physical plant, the building itself, built so that it could be expandable as call volume would increase and as you have to add staff?
Yes. So one of the things that we've been going through some other stuff with emergency management, and one of the things that we were looking at is putting a raised floor in the dispatch center. Because right now the furniture we have, we're kind of tied down to the trenches that are in the floors, and so we can reconfigure some stuff. So, but as we looked at it, we're using about 2/3 of available space because of the way the design is. We could functionally fit about maybe 2 for sure, 2 more workstations in there, maybe 3 depending on how the layout ends up. So we don't have the furniture, but we do have the space. At least for the dispatchers. The admin staff, it's going to be tight, but at least for the dispatchers, the important folks, we have staff for that.
Ray, I have a quick question, just a quick thought that came to my head, and you may say, Matt, you're cuckoo, it would never work, but I figured it's worth mentioning. With staffing and personnel issues being a constant battle, And as Councilwoman DeMaid said, you know, it takes a special person to sit in that chair, and I 100% agree. I'm just thinking along the lines of the education, you know, so there's a teacher shortage, but there is a substitute teacher list. You know, was that even possible for some of the folks that were dispatchers that may have left to different careers to be in a pool where they can call, kind of be on standby in a substitute position role, or?
We've had a few over time take that opportunity. The Central Services stole one of our one of our best folks over to their department earlier in the year, and she wanted to stay on part-time, and it just got to be too much.
Was it?
It just got to be too much. You start doing a full-time job and you get into that role, and then it's just, they find, and we have a union environment, and the bargaining agreement calls for a minimum number of hours to stay active, and we need them to stay active, because if they don't stay active, then they can't get trained, and then
Sure.
they're behind in their training, and then their performance falls, and so we have had folks that have done that, temporarily stayed, worked. They've kind of fallen off over time. We don't, our last part-time person just moved to Denver, so
Okay.
we don't have any part-time folks at the moment.
All right, thank you. Any other questions we have about, yes? Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, can you come up so the folks remote could hear, please?
Good evening, Becky McGuire, City Controller. I just have a question for Ray. When the dispatch center started and was planned, I recall that we were going to be able to manage with less dispatchers than the 3 centers, because everyone was going to be cross-trained, and there wasn't going to be these silos. And now it sounds like we're going backwards to the silos.
No, we're staying cross-trained. We just need more people to fill the seats. So we're taking our minimum staffing from 12 to 15, but we're getting out of the silos. Siloed is kind of what Woody was talking about, where they just did their own.
Ray, could you step to the microphone so that those of us who are remote can hear?
Sorry, that's kind of what Woody was talking about earlier with everybody doing their own stuff. That's kind of the siloed. What we did is that we've taken our minimum staffing from 12, and when we get to 15, so the additional staffing increases the minimum staffing and makes more folks available to cross-train and do all of the work.
What I was hearing earlier was that you were saying our chiefs requested, we have certain dispatchers for,
So they would rotate through. It would just be for them that, at that time, and other folks would rotate through. It's positions, not people.
okay,
It's consoles and radios, and, yeah,
all right,
it's not
thank
necessarily
you.
people. Welcome.
Mr. Hicksonball, were you able to hear all that?
Each gentleman.
Was that a yes?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we have about 5 minutes, so go ahead, Mr. Hazen.
We'll be at 99 with admin staff, or so. 90, 99. 96, sorry, misspoke. 96. There are 96 insurance. 96. Total. Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yep. So, bottom line, the budget increased from 11 million to 13.2 million. We do get 2+ million from the state annually. So this budget reflects about a $500,000 spend down of reserves. We currently have 6 million in there. This is about a 500,000 spend down of those. There's a couple capital projects that might take some of that reserve money. That's kind of you guys have the backup agreement that you guys are mulling around about what happens when we go over budget. You know, where's the money come from? When does it trigger for you guys to have to pay in again? So they're like, I don't know, and these are just broad numbers, so don't quote me on it, but let's say that the county says our county policy is 20% in reserves, so $13 million, 20%, okay, we need $2.5 million in reserves. And then we underspend and we have $500,000. Well, we make sure we have the 20% in reserves, we pay off some debt, and then the rest will get refunded back to whomever gets the refund. But that's the stuff that you guys are mulling over now. That's the second piece of that legislation. So, but that's what it is. So so I can tell you positively that going forward into 2022, there will likely be a reserve spend down of sorts. I don't know how much money we're going to get from the state. We don't know that before October. I don't know what that's going to come in at. I don't know how fast we'll get folks hired. So we've got, 14 new positions. Salary will go unused until we get folks hired. There will be some time there after the first year. So I don't exactly know how that's all going to work. So, but there's likely to be a spend down.
Thank you.
I know one thing that President Hicksonbaugh asked last year was we looked at other alternative scheduling models. We visited 12-hour shifts. We visited 4 10-hour days. We visited some other off-brand schedules. That's a bargain. That's in the bargaining agreement. We would have to break the bargaining agreement. The union was not interested in discussing any additional scheduling change. We presented.
Well, Ray, I'm going to push back on that. I understand that they don't want to agree to it, but you wouldn't have to break it. You would have to bargain a change.
Correct. They weren't even, it was a
Okay.
non-starter for them. They just said no.
Well, of course it's not. You gave them a 5% raise, $1.75 an hour and everything on top of that. Why
Yeah.
would they negotiate that out?
Understood.
Any other questions for Mr. Schultz? If not, well, I would like to say how much appreciate you coming this evening, sharing the information, and thanks for what you do, and please pass that along to your employees as well. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and, keep me in mind if you need a speaker for your town hall stuff. I'm happy to come out and teach 911 and talk about 911. The more people that know about 911, what we do, better it is for all of us. You guys probably saw TV commercials or heard radio commercials. We want to get the word out, so.
Well, I know my group really enjoyed that tour that a couple years back, and they've been anxiously awaiting the next one, so I appreciate it.
All right.
Are you open back up for that?
Yeah.
For us to come out?
Yeah, yep,
Great.
yep. Very good.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Will the regular meeting of Mishawaka Common Council for September 20th, 2021 please come to order? Members of the public will be asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting, with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the meeting, the council chairman will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purpose of submitting such comments, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked first state their name and address for the record. After completing his or her public comments, members of the public will once again be asked to place their microphones on mute. Thank you for your cooperation. For those that you are joining us here in person, will you please place all electronic devices on mute, remove your hats, and would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. DeMade,
Here.
Mr. Benicki,
Here.
Mr. Hazen,
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti,
Here.
Mr. Emmons,
Here.
Mr. Belovich,
Here.
Mr. Compton,
Here.
Mrs. Volker, Mr. Hicksonbaugh.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting September 7th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they'll stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorials.
Yes, Mr. President. We have a letter from the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding their recommendations from their September 14th, 2021 meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following use variances were considered. Appeal number 2021-27, an appeal submitted by Mark Shea, trustee to the Johns Shea Revocable Trust, and Rosemary Shea, trustee of the Rosemary Shea Revocable Trust, requesting a use variance for 318 West Cleveland Road and 320 West Cleveland Road, Granger, to allow for dog grooming and cat boarding on a C2 shopping center commercial property. The board, with a vote of 4-0, recommended approval. Appeal number 2021-32, an appeal submitted by the GLC MAP McKinley Trust, requesting a use variance for 422 West McKinley Avenue to allow a 3-tenant building, one with drive-through window, on a C1 general commercial zoning district. The board, with a vote of 4-0, recommended approval. This is signed by Carrie Myers, Administrative Planner. We also have a letter from the City Plan Commission regarding their recommendations from their September 14th, 2021 meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Plan Commission was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following proposed ordinances were considered. Petition number 2021-13, a petition submitted by MFD LLC Miller Family Development, requesting to amend the Whispering Pines planned unit development to remove the restrictions as a senior-only complex to become a market rate, non-age restricted. The commission, with a vote of 4 against, 1 for, forwarded no recommendation. Petition number 2021-14, a petition submitted by GLC MAP McKinley Trust, requesting to rezone 422 West McKinley Avenue from C4 Automobile-Oriented Commercial District to C1 General Commercial District. The commission, with a vote of 5-0, recommended approval. Petition number 2021-15, a petition submitted by Stephen and Joellen Miller, requesting to rezone 821 West Jefferson Boulevard from R1 Single Family Residential District and C1 General Commercial District to C6 Linear Office Commercial District. The commission, with a vote to 5-0, recommended approval. Pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-4-605, the Mishawaka Plan Commission hereby certifies to the Mishawaka Common Council the attached proposed ordinance regarding the above matters. This is signed by Carrie Myers, Administrative Planner.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
We have the introduction and swearing in of the Mayor's Youth Council.
Yes, and I think I will go against Mr. Hazen's recommendations to make them wait at the end of the meeting. We'll let them go now. Sorry, Luann.
Mr. Vice President, council members, Dave Wood, Mayor,
one of the special nights of the year. Tonight, we get to swear in our class of 2021, 2022 Youth Council. Now, next year, we get to hopefully do that in much bigger council chambers, but tonight, we've got a group of about 30-plus parents here to take the same oath of office that you and that I take, and that all of our public servants take. It's a oath we hold sacred, and one that we value very much. And so I think it only appropriate that the kids, our students, get to take the same oath. They will then depart this meeting and go upstairs, and they will select their officers for the upcoming year. And so we run this just the way the city council does their business. They will operate within their budget. They will operate within the Roberts Rules of Order, and they will effectively become Mishawaka public servants. This is a program that I consider to be one of my most important initiatives. I couldn't do it without the help of a lot of parent volunteers, and especially Lou Ann, who coordinates everything from here in the office, and my wife Jamie, who also gives up her time. This is a passion of hers as well as Debbie in my office, and like I said, many of our parents who volunteer as well. So this program, to me, is threefold. It's about community service, which we will come up with a community service project to this year. We think it'll be a continuation of the successful program for the Thanksgiving meals that we do. Kids will coordinate that. They will solicit donations, and they will pass out roughly 100+ meals, everything from the Thanksgiving turkey all the way to the pumpkin pie, and we'll distribute those the week of Thanksgiving to Mishawaka families most in need. This program will also be educational. When I visit local schools, the one thing that I'm struck by is the lack of education in local government. This right here, as you know, is the level of government that provides the most vital services to our citizens, the services that impact their lives on a daily basis. They learn about the federal government, a little bit less about the state, almost nothing about our level of government. And so this is our attempt to educate them on what it is to provide services to them and their families. Services such as police protection, fire protection, clean and safe water, electric, streets, roads, parks, on and on and on. And so this is our attempt to educate them, not just as a professor or a teacher might, but as we tend to prefer here in Mishawaka. We'll get their hands dirty, we'll let them operate heavy equipment, we'll put them up in the sky in buckets, and we'll make it fun for them and educational as well. And then lastly, it's a leadership program. These are the citizens that I think their opinion matters almost more than our own, because after all, we're here to build the future of Mishawaka for these kids, and hopefully give them a stake in building that future, so much so that they feel compelled and attracted to come back and live and stay here. That's our goal. And not only to live and stay here, but to work here, to serve here, to be public servants here, maybe even the future city council, mayors, whatever. That's our goal. We know that these are the best and the brightest. We've had kids who have gone on to many prestigious universities, all of the U.S. military academies. We've had a priest come out of youth council, and just this week we had a pilot, somebody who came through our program and has just become a pilot this week, flying military aircraft. That's pretty dang cool. But we want them to chase their dreams all over the world, wherever they may find them. We think that they'll return home to find them. And so the leadership portion, we try to give them a stake in what's going on in Mishawaka. We give them a hands-on opportunity to shape Mishawaka's future. And you have to look no farther than last year's class. What did they do? We gave them a blank slate of a park, a city park to design. And so we gave them a budget, we gave them a clean slate, and let them work within the parameters that we would have to work within in government. It can be slow, it can be frustrating, and they learned an awful lot about that. But at the end of the day, there was a very rewarding project that came out about it. And they renovated Humps Park into Heroes Park in honor of all the heroes in their life. The first teen-centric park designed by teens for teens. We don't know of any other opportunity that any other group has had. So we know that this is a best practice program. And I'm going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'm going to tonight take a liberty to say that our project that our kids designed last year just won the best placemaking project in the state of Indiana for last year. So. So in October, we'll have a small contingent to go down in front of about 1,000 people and accept the award. And so the only difficult thing about that is that now this year, we got to come up with something even bigger, I think, to let them do. But we have to look no farther than City Hall. I think we will give them a project within City Hall to work on. So I think they will have an ability to do a project there that will far exceed their time on the city council and will continue to give back to the city. And when I think about these kids, I appreciate what they do. They come here silent in most cases, and then they become friends with kids who they might not have otherwise met. 30 kids from 3 high schools, Mishawaka High School, Marion High School, Penn High School. They meet kids and in some cases become best friends with people they may not have otherwise met. They get the opportunity to get mentored by other kids who have gone through our program or community leaders such as yourselves, such as the clerk, such as business leaders out in the community. Get the opportunity to see businesses from the inside that they might not have seen otherwise, to see what makes Mishawaka special. And so they'll have all kinds of opportunity that they might not have otherwise had. And we know that this is a good program because I get mayors from not just all over Indiana, but all over the Midwest looking to copy and paste this in their own communities. Several have. So I want to thank everybody involved, but most especially the parents, because this is a commitment that you make as well as your kids. To make sure that they're here. They're given a great opportunity to be here. We expect them to take full advantage of it because this is their opportunity to shape and mold their community. So we'll keep them safe. We'll keep them well-fed. I promise you that much. And so if you can help us make sure that this is a priority for them, that's a great thing. And I want to thank you for allowing them to serve in this capacity because it couldn't happen without your service. So with that, we will go ahead and I'll call the kids up. We'll go ahead, I think, and have them come up, accept their oath and their pin if they get a pin, and then return to their seats, in which case we'll stand when everybody is ready to, when everybody has their oath, and then we will stand together and we will read off our oath. And then we'll, once we get done with that, we will adjourn to upstairs and go upstairs and elect officers and get you orientation. So we'll go ahead and get going. So I'm going to go to the readers. I'm going to call you up in alphabetical order, so please come up here. accept your oath and then walk through, and Mrs. Wood will give you a pen. All right, Albert Spalding. Alexa Cannon. Some kids, as I said, these are in the best of the best, which means they are involved in a lot of activities. So some we know cannot be here tonight because they're involved in other school activities. And so I won't miss an opportunity to swear at them. So we'll get them swore in at some future point in time. So we will make sure that they get sworn in at the next meeting. So Alexis Katselis. Bella Schatzel. Christopher Hahn. Clay Pica. Delaney Duval. Delaney Gottbold. Elena Wright. Grace Vandenberg. Grace O'Hara. Isaac Prince. Set with mom. Jackson Horvath. Jacob Murphy. I know where he's at tonight. James Wood. Definitely know where he's at tonight. Katie Madlam. Kevin Murphy. Kyla Bowman. Laney Kasnia. Madeline Brzeski. Maura Myers. Nicholas Frolke. Patrick Anderson. Patrick DeKeever. Reese Sutherland. Riley Nidbalski. Oh, there. I didn't see. Sorry about that. Ryan Allman. Vince Anderson. Wilson Wright. Will Shalio. All right, are you ready to go? Stand up. Raise your left hand. Or right hand, I'm sorry. And repeat after me. I state your name. I, Bill Shalom. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Indiana. And the Constitution of the State of Indiana. And that I will observe. And that I will observe. And obey. And obey. The laws and ordinances. The laws and ordinances. Of the city of Mishawaka. Of the city of Mishawaka. And that I will faithfully perform. And that I will faithfully perform. And discharge the duties. And discharge the duties. Incumbent upon me. Incumbent upon me. As a member of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. As a member of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. Fairly and honestly. Fairly and honestly. And to the best of my skill and ability. And to the best of my skill and ability. So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations. So, Vice President, I'm going to take them upstairs and we'll get on with our meeting. But if you will allow me to go out of order a little bit, and I was going to mention something under privilege of the floor, but as you may be aware, we have sponsored a home the city of Mishawaka has at the Mishawaka Habitat Work Project today. We're building 6 homes for families in need. And we began work today, got an awful lot of work done, but just wanted to invite you out, any of our staff, and to you. You're invited to come out. 8 to 5, 8 to 4, we'll be out there. If you can only work the morning, that's great. If you want to work an afternoon, that's great, or one day, or 4, or whatever it's convenient for you. But we'll be out there all week, and I can tell you after the first day, the city house is the class of the field. So hopefully we'll see you out there. So.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment just to express my gratitude for all that you, Jamie and Luann do. There's no doubt why this is the envy of many around the state. So you guys do a great job. Thank you for everything you do, and look forward to seeing the next project. If it's anything close to what you guys did at Heroes Park, it'll be short of amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
And unless some of the parents want to stay for a free local civic lesson, you're more than welcome to leave as well. Mr. O'Hara, you probably should stay.
I know. Not the nice way.
It's hot, it's warm in here. Luann?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. We'll get them upstairs. Okay.
Crazy to see how many kids are now old enough to be in. Just nieces and nephews. And Ken's. Pledge.
I think they're only taking juniors and seniors. That's what they were taking. They said no. They did. Said juniors and seniors, and then they invited some kids back to be like the mentor your first year.
This is what he said.
What's that?
Pat Hingle sends us the attachment. Come on, guys. It just takes a little bit of thought when you're putting it in.
Yeah, he's got it.
Can't you read that?
Are those the calls?
Yeah. And I shouldn't say anything about that. It's possible that it loaded that way. And it's
Did you see the video?
No. No. Then-
oh, well.
Okay. Mr. BP.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. After that nice presentation, seeing no report of special committees, moving on to ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-31, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to remove restrictions as a senior-only complex to become market rate non-age restricted, Whispering Pines Apartments.
Thank you. I'll assign that to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance 2021-32, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, rezoning for redevelopment with 3-tenant commercial building, 422 West McKinley Avenue.
Also assigned to Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-33, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is rezoning from C1 General Commercial to and R1 Single Family Residential to C6 Linear Office Commercial, 821 West Jefferson Boulevard.
Thank you. This also will go to Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-34. This is the civil city budget and tax levy for 2022.
I will assign this to the Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to resolutions.
Resolution R 2021-21, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 318 and 320 West Cleveland Road, Granger, Indiana. Use variance to allow dog grooming and cat boarding, 318 and 320 West Cleveland Road. Gordon's Grooming.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on resolution number R 2021-21. Anyone here in person wish to speak in favor of resolution 2021-21? Would you please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please? Anyone wanting to speak on behalf of the dog grooming?
I think there's somebody remote.
Seeing no one here in person, I'll open it up to anybody that is participating remotely. Would anybody remotely like to speak in favor of resolution R 2021-21?
They need to unmute.
And if you are there and have your phone muted, could you please unmute? Asking once again, is there anybody participating remotely that would like to speak in favor of Resolution R 2021-21?
Gordon's Grooming.
Gordon's Grooming. Last call.
There we go.
I have hope. Did somebody chime in regarding Gordon's Grooming? Do we know? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Compton.
Mr. Vice President, I make a motion that we postpone this variance request until we have representative from Gordon's Grooming here to discuss this with us.
Do you want to give a date of the next meeting?
We can postpone it to the next meeting, which
Thank you.
is October, whatever,
Yeah.
first meeting in October. Thank you.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a
Second
second?
that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes,
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That was a vote on postponing Resolution R 2021-21.
Resolution R 2021-22, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 422 West McKinley Avenue, Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a use variance for a 3-tenant building, one with drive-through window, 422 West McKinley Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a public hearing on resolution number R 2021-22. Is anyone participating here in person like to speak in favor? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, council. My name is Jeff Ballard. I'm with Dan Charner and Associates. We're located at 1643 Commerce Drive in South Bend. We're representing GLC MAP McKinley Trust and the contingent developer, Allrig USA. It's a twofold process. You've obviously got the first reading for the rezoning, but we're also doing the land use variances here right now. The contingent purchaser and owner of the property contacted the current owner with the goal of developing a proposed 3-tenant building to house a restaurant facility with the drive-through, retail store, and then a small sit-down restaurant on that current parcel. We did meet with staff. We determined that the best procedure would be to go through the rezoning process and also request land use variances to allow the restaurant facility with the drive-through, and also having 3-tenant and a single building with the C1 commercial zoning that we're going for as well. That's the summary, essentially. I can answer any questions if you
Thank
have
you.
any.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Ballard? All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Mamalin.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Compton.
Thank you. Mr. Ballard,
Yes,
is
sir.
this a spec building? Are there tenants lined up, or are you allowed to tell us?
I believe I have heard tell of Starbucks. That's the only tenant that I'm aware of.
That's the drive-through,
I believe so.
possibly?
Yes. I can't commit to that, but
Understand. Strong rumor.
absolutely strong.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
And the others are spec, as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Anyone else here in person would like to speak in favor of Resolution 2021-22? If not, I'll open it up to anybody participating remotely. Would anybody like to speak in favor of Resolution 2021-22? Is there anyone here in person wishing to speak in opposition to Resolution 2021-22? Anyone remotely like to speak in opposition to R 2021-22? Are there any council members wish to speak? Call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, will you please pull the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The resolution passes 8-0. Resolution R 2021-23, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, introducing an ordinance for annexation, adopting a written fiscal plan and a definite policy for annexation for the property, a 9.15 acre parcel located north and east of 1420 Industrial Drive and west of Burkett Avenue.
Thank you. This is public hearing on resolution number R 2021-23. Is anyone here in person like to speak in favor of this resolution? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Vice President, members of the council, Ken Prince, City Planner. The parcel before you for annexation is a little over 9 acres. As required by state law, we have to identify any expenditures, additional expenditures that are required as part of the annexation process. We've been through this a number of times, but for those in the audience, we route these to every department, applicable department in the city, and they each have identified that they can serve the property under their existing budget. If you can imagine 9 acres attached to an existing, an industrial use that is already in the city is de minimis relative to the size of the city. It's not unexpected. The area is 64% contiguous to the city, and it is actually part of a larger island that I would expect to come into the city over time. So literally, the city wraps entirely around this piece when you look at the overall property that's currently farm field there off Burkett. So what's happening is J-Mill Packaging is looking at their long-term needs and is looking to buy this 9 acres for their future expansion, even though they have no immediate plans to build a building or move forward with that expansion. They're essentially locking up the property so they can expand in the future, which we think is a good thing. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else here in person wishing to speak in favor of Resolution 2021-23? Is there anyone participating remotely that would like to speak in favor of Resolution 2021-23? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition here in person regarding 2021-23? Is there anyone participating remotely that would like to speak in opposition to Resolution 2021-23? Please unmute. Seeing none, any council members wishing to speak? Call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, will you please pull the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Resolution passes 8-0.
Ordinance is on second reading.
Yes, Mr. Vice President. Proposed ordinance number 2021-30, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, providing zoning classification therefore. This is an annexation and rezoning to I-1 Light Industrial for a future expansion of adjacent manufacturing business, vacant land at 58200 Block Burkett Road, west of 1405 and 1505 Burkett Road. This is a vote only.
Thank you. May I have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. Vice President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-30, report that they have examined said matter, and in their opinion, it should be adopted, and this is signed by the entire committee. And I move for its acceptance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Committee report passes 8-0.
Thank you. And as Madam Clerk had mentioned, this is a vote only this evening. We had held our public hearing at the last meeting. So before I call for the question, I'll see if any council members have anything to say regarding this. If not, I will call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, will you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Our next item is privilege of the floor. This is the portion of the meeting that members of the public are invited to come forward and speak on non-agenda items. I know we do have quite a few people here wishing to speak this evening. If you could, just come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And we will start with the folks that are here in person before I open it up to the members participating remotely. So at this time, I'll invite anybody to come up and state their name and address for the record, please. I know somebody's got. Sure, come, please. Please. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
That is a nice officer. He's done my oath job. He's very polite and he's very good representative of the city. He's very, very, very nice gentleman right there.
Thank you.
Always polite, very good officer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Kate. Sorry, I don't mean to point, sorry. My name is Kate Coombs. I live right around the corner. About a half a block, soon to be. I'm probably moving to Mr. Pericini's place across the street. Amen.
You're okay.
There's a lot going on around me right now. It's not really pretty. And it's not just me. It's not me that I'm worried about because I'm strong and I've been through this before. I've been through a camera house for taunted and creeped out by whatever, a Mishawaka firefighter and his wife. Yeah, it's true. I'm not gonna say names. Anyways, so it was very sick and tormenting. Actually, 2 firefighters where I had to call Kalen that I was scared for my life. I was home alone, middle of winter. It was very scary. So I lived through that. I got out of it. Then my father helps me find a new apartment right around the corner. Guess what? Another camera in my home and privacy invasion. I'm not saying I'm Aaron Woods and whatever, take a picture on $5,000 and lock him up later. Could you imagine from September, and you find out in December when you're watching a man critique you as you lay down in bed by yourself? And you're like, wow, I just heard him critique me. You don't know what critiquing means.
Excuse me,
Follow every-
Mrs.
To
Coons,
follow every movement. So you need to hear this, guys.
would you mind, just so the
2 minutes.
folks,
I got
Mrs.
45
Coons?
seconds, 46.
No, you have plenty of time. I just want to make sure that
I know.
people can hear you. So if you could just
Okay, long as-
continue to
yes,
face.
Mr. Mamaletti. Is
the
Kristen your
microphone so
relative,
people can-
Kristen? You know Kristen Mamaletti?
Of course I do.
Who is that to you, sir?
Is a cousin of mine.
She's a very nice girl. I went to school with her.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Long story short, whatever, there are the hillbillies in my book. Because that's pretty sick what a first responder would do to a woman. Sorry, officer, right? Pretty sick. But yeah, I lived through it. And now I got a Catholic attorney. Because Lenny Zappia said, Katie, they're above you. Well, above, I know they're above me.
Could you stand closer to the microphone? I'm
I
sorry.
don't want you to hear me. I want everybody else to hear me at this point.
Well, we need,
Yes, sir.
close to the microphone as
Yes, sir.
possible. Thank you.
So I have a Catholic attorney now, and Lenny Zappi as my attorney. So I'm a good little Catholic Christian working woman. And whatever. So long story short, he said, they're above you. I said, yeah, literally in a room with a coffee table and two people up there, you know, watching me. And it was the bizarrest, sickest, tormentous thing I've ever been through. So long story short, I got through it. That was 4 months of my life. Nobody really wanted to fight the city of Mishawaka Fire Squad. Boys, girls, whatever. I have no kids right here. So I lived through that. Now I'm over with a black woman that signed 3 different fictitious names on my receipt. Rent. She's dealing drugs, and she's a child molester. I'm positive. My fiance, she closed up, she's in my home, watching me mobily on her device. As ADT, you would get, you know, you can watch your phone home from, you know, security on your phone, wherever you're at. Call her up, whatever, right? So 4 months of this now. She's dealing drugs. She has a 13 or 12, I mean, she's little, guys. This girl that she hangs out with in her house all day long,
Ma'am?
whatever. She's like 13. I want you to know this. Whatever. That could be your daughter, hanging out with the old black lady that's a pervert and a dope dealer. Okay? That's underneath me. That's what's going on. Then I got to her dealing with the drug guy. I'm not, you know, whatever. No names right now. I don't care. And then the old man behind me is dealing the, about 14-year-old boys. They weren't 18. I can look at somebody and tell you how I'm crying, man. About 14-year-old boys behind me. Okay? So long.
Ma'am?
Long enough.
Ma'am, Mrs. Kuntz, Mrs. Kuntz, Mrs. Kuntz.
Yes, sir.
Nobody can hear you unless you face.
So a long
the
story
council
short,
and
I would love the city, run for
and-
city council and put all this behind me, and really I would. I just want you guys to know what's going on at 525 East 4th Street. My home. I guess she called me apartment B on top, so I'm apartment B. They have one mailbox. I've got mail from the crew in the back, which is a federal fence. Forget division, you know, whatever. It's really scary for me right now. They haven't moved their vehicles in a couple of days, and they're really is scary for me right now. And I can't afford to move to the first of the month.
Well,
And then the officer, ended up in jail over the weekend because I called for help. Because they were watching me, her dealer, whatever, that came to every Saturday night for the past 4 months. I don't care who he is. Because they were watching me and perving out on me, guys. Sick, and I had to stop. I called Lenny. I said, man, sir, what I do? Mr. Z, call the cops, he said. So I did, and I ended up in jail. They ordered me, it's over, and I told the judge exactly what's going on. ×2.
okay.
What I do now.
Extremely sorry you're going through this.
Yeah, me
for the
too.
last 4 months.
You know what else? I have one more thing to tell you.
If I could just finish
And I might have a
speaking.
civil suit on necessity. I want to tell you one more thing. Then when I got arrested, it ain't silly, it ain't cute, it ain't funny. There's nothing silly about this at all. It'll be your daughter, your wife, home alone.
Sure.
Okay. So I was really disgusted with one of, you know, whatever. My mom, I love the cops. I have respect for the cops. I'm a good woman. I have family and nephew on the force. That's a great cop. He's a gentleman. He is. This cop that put me in a squad car, and if they already knew what was going on, and they know she's dealing and she's creeping, whatever. You hear me? So anyways, I called for help, but it didn't work out my way. I went to jail anyways. Oh, I got it released. But the officer's name, Lunderman, whatever. Very, very tall man, probably 50-year-old, some man. He mentally abused me in the back of that squad car for a good 20
Well, ma'am, this seems to be
It really, you know what?
matters, if I
Yeah.
could just finish talking, and I want to help you out as much as possible. I think you're probably better served to just exit here and speak with the great officer, Mr.
No, please
Poltinsky,
wait.
that you
Let's
spoke
get
up
my
to.
address, sir, Mr. Mammalini.
We do have that, 525
Yes.
East 4th Street.
And I'm suing, you know, at this
In
point,
apartment
I
B.
don't care about, I don't want to go back to these properties.
Sure.
I don't want to retrace my steps through horror houses. I mean, like a Halloween house, guys, who would?
Okay. Well, I think you probably, your best help would be to
But I know.
step outside
I
and
want you
speak
guys
with
to know what's going
officer.
on.
I appreciate
And
that.
I think that offer needs to, you know, be unpaid leave for a little while.
We definitely, I think, I'm pretty confident that 8 of the
Letterman.
members
Letterman.
have written down the address, and we will be speaking to
And it is also
Officer.
October is
Excuse
Domestic
me, ma'am.
Violence Month.
Can I just finish, please?
Absolutely beat down women. mentally,
Okay.
physically.
We've written down the address. We will speak with Officer Faltinsky shortly after this meeting. We hope you figure everything out, and we'll be in
And his
touch.
name is Lunderman. It's not Zabzinski.
Thank you.
So let's get it tight and get it right, community.
Thank
It
you.
ain't tight over there and right at all.
Thank you.
These kids, it ain't molesting kids underneath me, and they ain't dope dealing behind me.
Okay.
And I had to call them. She turned the music up for 3 nights before I called, because I would call at 10 to 8 in the morning. They ain't keeping me up all night.
Thank you.
I don't have money to go to Granger, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I want you to know what's going on. I'm moving over here to Parachini. I'm putting it behind me.
Appreciate it. All right. Thank you very
I'm
much.
going to NUTEC classes, and maybe I'll run next year
Thank you.
with these women. It's a great woman.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Tell Kristen hi.
And you tell your family hi as well.
I will. I will.
Thank you.
I always tell my mom, Miss Rock, PD loves you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I was right behind you.
Anyone else would like to come and speak on privilege of the floor, please?
Thank you, Mr. Manuelli.
Thank you, Mrs. Coontz.
Maybe I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. Mr. Vice President,
Yes.
I've just been informed that we had the petitioner was on and is having a hard time logging in.
Okay.
Do you want us to try to get them logged in again?
I think that would probably be in our best interest to do that, if that's fine, Ms. Han. If we could just jump in and sure the folks that online, the petitioner has now been able to log on, and we will open that back up.
Let's see if he can get back in. I'm going to ask Patrick if maybe I don't know if it's this caller that we have on, that you
Okay.
see on, see if he can get that person logged in.
I didn't get much out of that.
And this is for Resolution R 2021-21.
It is
523. East 4? Okay. Is her apartment.
Okay, they are muted, and he's trying to get them to unmute. So I'll keep working on that if you want to keep going, and then we can have them at the end.
Sure, absolutely. So we will go back to privilege of the floor, and as you guys have heard, we do have some unfinished business to come before the council. So I know several of you guys are here to speak on certain issues, just so we can get everybody through in a timely fashion. We can try to limit it to perhaps three minutes per person. We'll take notes, and we'll go from there.
I'll keep it short.
Sure.
Lacey Hahn, I'm at 604 West 13th Street,
Thank you.
corner of 13th and Wells. Here tonight with some of my neighbors from the West End. We've all spoke to Woody a few times too. We're having our neighborhood meeting starting again this Thursday, which we're all really excited about. They come at a perfect time because there's been a definite increase in crime activity in our neighborhood. I would say over the summer, heavily, and then maybe in the last 60 days. So as I mentioned, we are taking some steps to start meeting again in person. But we're here tonight just to let you know that we need something to be done. We want to keep our neighborhood, the nice, wonderful neighborhood it's been for years and years. And we're looking for solutions that maybe you can offer us before we meet on Thursday or go any further with making some moves. You know, are there any solutions you can provide to us as private citizens, what we can do to help keep our neighborhood safe?
Sure. Well, thank you for coming this evening. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mrs. Hahn? I would just like to make a comment. I think that you're doing everything, you're taking the right steps, starting out. You're in great hands with Councilman Emmons, and now that his meetings are opening back up, you guys have that avenue to voice your concerns as well. You guys are always welcome to come here as well. I highly recommend coming to the privilege of the floor because you have the eyes and ears of typically 9 council members, and I would just continue to suggest to go to Mr. Emmons' meetings, and he takes wonderful notes, and I know he does a great job of following up, but you also have 8 other members that can help you guys out as well.
Okay.
So I think you guys are doing all the right things at this point. I know that we've been kind of up to date, or at least I have, on some of the properties
Just
on that
trying to be a
Facebook
little
page.
more action focused, you know, what can we do? And it's been a while with COVID since we've all been able to kind of get together and share our concerns. So now
Sure.
it's just kind of start taking those action steps.
Absolutely. Mr. Belovich?
Mr. Vice President, I'd just like to say, first of all, I want to thank you for coming to the meeting here this evening. And anytime you see something that you feel is totally improper or there's something suspicious going on, don't hesitate to call the police. And that's what you need to do.
I have on occasion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I will call the non-emergency before I call 911. Is that something you would suggest if you don't feel like it's an emergency? Start with non-emergency, or do you think 911 is a suitable
Well, I think if
alternative?
you need to have someone out there quickly, you feel you need something, needs to be stopped, you call 911.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback on Mr. Belovich's comments, I highly recommend that as well. And as an email that we'd received earlier this afternoon, calls of service are documented from the police department, so that helps kind of build the case on a certain property. First question that one of us will ask is how many calls have the police been?
Okay.
And if it's a long list, then it could possibly be deemed as a nuisance property. So, Mr. Compton, I know you had yours.
Yeah, Ms. Hahn, thank you for coming, first of all, today. And
Happy to be here.
the people from the West End. And I follow a West End page on Facebook, and I saw this coming. And I'm glad that you're communicating. Unfortunately, this is not just the West End. This is all of Mishawaka. It's all of this country, and it's going on all over. And I think all of us don't know why. We can point fingers at COVID. We were wrapped up. People feel frustrated. There's a lot of weapons in our society. People pull them out quickly. You add alcohol and a few other things, and it really creates a problem for us. We need to be diligent, we need to document, and we need to contact the police. Unfortunately, in that process, it's not overnight. There's a lot of fentanyl and heroin in the community. There was one in my neighborhood that took months for us to get that house back. And it all happened in that case because of a tax sale. They forgot to pay their taxes. So that's how that house got emptied, turned around, and has neighbors that are more respectable to the neighborhood and the other neighbors. I encourage you. I know it's frustrating. If it's next door to me, it's frustrating. But I encourage you to document and call the police and try not to get too frustrated, but continue to do that. As our Vice President said, this is documented. This information is documented, and that's what needs to be done for the city attorney and for the police to make a case against a household, a landlord, a landowner, whatever it might be. And it is frustrating and is time-consuming for our police department, for our legal department, and for all of us, for the neighbors. Unfortunately, laws are set up with the idea that people will abide by them. And here's these rules, and if you don't, here's the punishment, and people abide. Well, it seems today people are just kind of thumbing their nose at all that. And it's very frustrating. And I don't think any of us have a solution. Mr. Emmons and I were talking earlier. If we had the solution, people from around the country would be coming to Mishawaka asking us what that is. We don't have it. We have the tools we have, and we ask you to use. We certainly don't want to walk away from it. We certainly don't. That's not our intention. But it is challenging, and it is frustrating, and it is time-consuming, unfortunately. Those are my comments on it, right or wrong.
Thank you,
for
Mr. Compton. Before I let Mr. Emmons speak, I just want to remind folks that if you could just hold off speaking until you're at the podium so the folks online can hear you as well. So go ahead, Mr. Emmons.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just want to make one comment to the group that's here tonight from the West End. you're doing the right thing. You got together, you're issuing your concerns of what's going on in that part of the West End, and I applaud you for that. Taking the first step from last Thursday, you came tonight with another step. We have another step on Thursday. I've already an appointment with the chief of police to talk to him about the problems that we're having in that area. That is another step. And once we get some information there, we can express to him what we feel is needed. Those are the steps. And as I said the other night, the more people that get involved, the more information that we can gather, the better off we're going to be. And I applaud you as a neighborhood of sticking together and communicating to the right people. And as I said the other night, I can assure you, something will be done. It takes a little time, but as long as we work together and we stick together, and that we can get it accomplished. And like I say, I want you to come to my meetings, not only just for this reason, but any other concern that comes up. We have guest speakers that try to address different problems in our neighborhood, and so the more attendance that we get, the better off we're going to be, and the more solutions that we can come to. So I want to thank you again for coming tonight, coming for last Thursday, and I hope to see you Thursday night at St. Babel's. And like I say, as a reward, we'll have West End Bakery there. So, thank you.
Who's your guest speaker?
Yes,
The guest speaker, which I'd announce under new business, is Mayor Wood. He'll be there talking about the state of the city, and he'll be there to answer any questions after he makes his presentation. So please, try to attend. And anybody else that you know, please have them come also. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Mrs. DeMaid.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Sure.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Pat Hinkle, the city attorney, and Lieutenant Reppert for their work on the reports that we received today. I have been aware of this since July of this year, when I spent an hour at Art and Elements store right across the street from the property in question. When I went to the door, the shop wasn't closed, but I had to knock to get into that business, as every single business there in the west end of the 700 block or the 400 block of West 7th. Shopkeepers keep their doors locked during the day and only open it when people are there to do business with them. That is not the way to have this neighborhood. These businesses or these properties that we're talking about have had impound cars, welfare checks, domestic violence, armed robberies, overdoses, and burglaries in the last year. 81 calls to service for these apartments. And I know it takes time, but these people are sick of it, and I'm sick of it. And I think that maybe we can put our heads together a little bit more and have something done a little sooner. I don't want these businesses to leave. I don't think anybody in the West End wants these businesses to leave, and they are going to leave. We're going to have more empty storefronts on that 400 block of West 7th if we don't get our stuff together. And so I thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. DeMaid. Appreciate that. I just want to make a comment on Mr. Emmons's monthly meetings. It's been quite some time since I've been able to do it, because I also host, along with Mr. Hazen, a neighborhood watch meeting in the Twin Branch area. So I think the Twin Branch Neighborhood Watch is currently one of the longest active watch meetings in this area, and it's very well attended. We have great speakers as well, but I think you guys are on the right path to kind of organize, and the Facebook page is great. Everybody keeps an eye out for one another and reports any suspicious activity. I just want to strongly suggest that you guys continue doing this moving forward. I know it's so much easier to do when there's issues going on, but everybody seems to be quiet when things are fine and quiet. Whereas you guys got to continue this organization. Attend Mr. Emmons's meetings. If you can't attend there, you're more than welcome to join ours as well. It's on the third Wednesday of the month. We cover a lot of the same issues, have some of the same speakers. Just keep doing what you're doing. Try to grow this watch meeting. this watch group and just continue, keep your foot down. With that, I'll open it up to the next person that would like to speak.
Mr. Vice President, if I could, before you.
Yes, please, Mr. Hicksonball.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. These issues are always frustrating, not only to us on the council, but more importantly to people who reside in the neighborhood itself. And I think it's safe to say that we're committed as elected officials to work with you to try to address this situation, along with other similar situations in the city of Mishawaka, quite frankly. I agree with all the suggestions that my colleagues have made. In particular, the comment that Mr. Mamalani just made, I think is very appropriate. Organizing into a formal neighborhood watch will not solve all problems, but it certainly can help address certain problems, and it may be a step to consider. I want to also reference some other steps that this council has taken already to deal with some similar issues. We have begun a process with the administration to try to review our city ordinances to see what, if anything, we can do in compliance with state law to address these type of neighborhood issues. Now, admittedly, many of the issues that we have discussed have more of a code enforcement feel to them, but the issues that you are raising, in my experience, have a fair amount of overlap to some of those issues, and it's not inconceivable to me that some of our ordinances that go beyond code enforcement issues, but wander into the area of nuisance properties and issues in the neighborhood can and will also be addressed as part of that process. So that is one thing that we as a council are doing. Two other tangible steps that we've taken in to address these type of issues are, we've heard from our police officers that there is a need to not only recruit the best and brightest officers to come to work for the Mishawaka Police Department, but to retain the experienced officers that we have. So as part of the recent salary negotiations that we have concluded with the representatives of the police department, we've made a commitment on the part of the council and the city to try to put together the strongest economic package that we could to, again, not just recruit new officers, the best and the brightest in Mishawaka, but retain the best officers that we have on our police force right now. The other issue that we have raised in the budget meetings that concluded just this past week was the topic of whether we have enough police officers working in the city of Mishawaka. I'll go on record as saying I think that we need to increase our police force. That won't happen overnight. That won't address all the issues. But I think all of us are ever more concerned that what we enjoy about living in the city of Mishawaka is at risk if we don't take some tangible steps to try to address it both in the short term and in the long term. So again, we appreciate the fact that you have come to us with these issues. We'll continue to work with you on it. But I thought it was important for you to know that we're trying to address it from a number of standpoints in addition to what had been highlighted by my colleagues. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicksonball. And if you don't mind, I will check in with Madam Clerk to check on the petitioner.
Not heard back yet.
I have not heard back yet. That means the floor is yours.
All right. I am Janet Hyduck, 622 West 8th Street in Mishawaka. Most of you know me. Most of you have known me for a long time. Most of you know that I work in the, drug and alcohol field. Currently, I am a coordinator for a federal grant here in St. Joe County on marijuana and alcohol. And I've been in the field for a long, long time under the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. I have lived in St. Joe County on the West End pretty much my entire life. I can tell you that we've had issue properties off and on through the times I've grown up, but I can tell you from living here in the West End that it has not been as bad as it is since probably 6 to 8 months ago or so. It is getting, in my opinion, scary and out of control. My family owns a business on West Street in the West End. Last year, I cannot tell you how many times my sister called me at night because she was working to come and meet her so that she was safe. My mom never had to do that. She could be there with no problem. I've talked with my sister-in-law, who is vice principal at St. Babel School. They're seeing issues. They have had kids see drug deals outside the windows. They may not report it, but she's there and the kids see it. I have never heard of stuff going on like it is now. People up and down 7th Street, 8th Street, the alleys, people stealing and the cops being called, gunfiring. This is my neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. I bought a house in the West End because I grew up in the West End. It's a good place to live. I'm angry at some instance because I shouldn't have to worry about sitting on my front porch or in my backyard that something's going to happen. The West End was where I grew up. We had a great neighborhood. We still have great businesses that want to thrive in the West End. Now, 1,500 feet from a school, drug dealing is a federal offense. If we can't use that, I don't know what else we can use. But we have to look at, and I understand you're more than willing to help, and I appreciate that. I appreciate looking at the tools we have. What ordinances do we have? What, zoning laws do we have? What federal laws do we have that they can come in and help out? I've worked with DEA. I have worked with HIDA. They can come in if we need them to. And I don't want to say anything bad about our police department because they're great, they're overworked, they're probably underpaid, they are out there all the time. But we need to have some sensible solutions coming up down the pike so it continues not to get entrenched. Because I do not want to see the West End entrenched like it is on the west end of South Bend. Because once it's here and it's entrenched, it's hell to get it gone. We're going to have to learn to live with it. We shouldn't have to do that. We have to make people responsible for their properties and for their tenants and whoever else we need to make responsible for being good citizens and good neighbors. I have said this, my neighbors are coming on Thursday night. We have a group, Woody, I'm sure will be there. You may be surprised because people are fed up. People want to raise their kids in these neighborhoods. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. And so I'm just saying to you, we want to help you. We are more than willing to do legwork. If there's things we need to research for you guys, if there's things we need to look at, if we need to come up with some really crazy solutions that maybe will work, we are willing to go that extra mile because we all live here, or have a business here, and we care. And so I just want to get that on the record. I wasn't going to talk tonight, but I feel like I really have to. And I appreciate Maggie, I appreciate Woody, Matt, we've talked. I appreciate you guys wanting to work with us on this. We have got to do better for the west end of Mishawaka, no longer neglect it. It needs to come back, and we need to do something. And I feel for Mike because I feel like the same thing is going on the north side and Central Park and all Broadway, all that area. I feel for that area too. But right now, all we can do is look at the west end because we need to have something done. And so I just want to say that, and I appreciate that, and I do look forward to working with you guys on this. Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to thank you for finding the courage, if you could step up. Thank you. If you could come by the microphone, just so others can see you. But,
I'm Italian, and I don't really have problems with speaking my mind, sometimes to my detriment. But you know what? It's because I care.
well, and I appreciate that, and it's that same Italian heritage that introduced the west end of Mishawaka to me when my paternal grandparents came from Italy and landed on West 6th Street. So my memory of the West End and 6th Street is pristine, and it's up here where you see the manicured lawns, et cetera, and it is disheartening to see.
And I
the
have to
grade.
say, I'm sorry,
You're fine.
Matt, I'm sorry, but I have to say too, we worked so hard for us to really want West End Bakery to not go away. Then somebody bought it, came back in. What are we going to do if they decide this is too much for them to deal with?
Sure.
That's sad. I'm sorry. They put in a lot of money into that building and to have a good business, and people want West End Bakery. They want interiors. They want R&D. They want these places.
Sure.
So, we have got to do something. We've got to do something.
And if I could make just one comment regarding, and we can delve into this later on offline, but I did want to make a comment that I know the police, and Mr. Hicksonball had mentioned this as well, the police are fine policemen and women are doing an outstanding job, and I think we need to look maybe a little bit further into it seems to be a revolving door, and I know you and I have spoke in this regard prior, and I don't think that there should be a reason why our police officers know the names of these criminals by name. So there's something that needs to
And
be
it's
done.
frustrating on their end, I bet.
Absolutely,
And it shouldn't be.
and they're doing a great job. So I think if we can delve into that a little bit deeper, it'd be great. Yes,
Yeah,
Mr. Hazen?
Yeah, Andy.
Janet,
Tony?
you've been involved in a long time.
I have.
In the system, and that was exactly what I was going to touch on. What you people are doing is fantastic. This is why Mishawaka was great, because we have citizens that are involved. You have to stay involved. We'll work our hardest, but it goes beyond us. It goes beyond the police. We have to get the prosecutors and the judges to give the sentences that these people deserve, so they don't keep getting around and keep talking. And that's, so if you of all people know a ton of people in that system, so if you can help write letters or whatever
Yeah.
and say, look, we have to do, we're losing our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's not just this neighborhood, it's a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And it is scary. And you're exactly right. When we bottom out, we're not gonna be able to dig ourselves back out. So we have to get control now. We're still a good community. When people show up like this, we know that we're still a good community. 80% of the people live in your neighborhood are good people. It's that freaking other number that causes all the problems. And I know that we all strongly feel that we will do anything we can to help you. We appreciate you coming in tonight. Don't lose that. You have to stay involved. One thing, I don't want to push, because I don't know that much about electronics, but one thing that Twin Branch does is the, what's that, Ring, and any kind of system that you can get that put on your door and see who's outside. And they put it on the Facebook, like Matt said, they put it on Facebook, hey, there's two guys walking from my house, don't belong here. And it helps a lot. There's two guys checking doors on Sixth Street. I mean, that's something you can possibly do. Call the police every time you see something. If your gut says there's something wrong, there's probably something wrong. Call the police, that's what they're there for.
Yes.
And I'm serious. If you feel like something is wrong, then there's probably something wrong in the situation, so call the police.
And Tony, I agree with you that we need to get the prosecutor. I kind of get disappointed that maybe some of this stuff gets dismissed. And I think that's part of the issue, is if you know you're not going to have to worry about it, you just continue doing what you're doing in a neighborhood. But I do think that we do need to look at that, and that is something we had talked about, was where else do we need to look at the squeaky wheel to get something
That's
done?
exactly where we need
Yeah.
to look, because I'm telling you, the number one deterrent to crime is swift and sincere punishment. You have to do it swift, and it has to be decisive, and it has to be equal to everybody, and we don't have that right now, and we need it. We need it bad.
Thank you.
And real,
Yeah, Mike?
and before I switch over to these questions over here to his, Mr. Hazen's comment, Ring doorbell is always great, and there's also an app or a community called, I believe it's Next Door Neighbor, or Next Door app, and it's a way for people that all reside in a certain area. If there's a notification, if one of you guys posts it, it gets populated to everybody around that area, so it's a good way to be vigilant. So just wanted to mention that as well. So, Mr. Belovich.
One thing, I think what, the city wants to do is we're trying to move forward and have these two buildings declared nuisance residents. But it takes time to get that done. And I know with some of the federal regulations that have been passed because of COVID, it's difficult to move people out of rental homes or rental apartments. But I think as soon as we possibly can, we want to do everything we can to rectify that situation. And if the owner of that building or those buildings isn't willing to cooperate, I think the city's going to do everything possible to try to have those folks removed from those residences.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Compton.
I just wanted to throw in a couple other comments that we just went through budget hearings with the different departments, and police was one of them. And they are implementing some tools that I'm not really comfortable talking about. I'd want them to bring them out. They may or may not be helpful in identifying people in these situations, but they sound pretty interesting, pretty high-tech. Just some high-tech surveillance going on in the community that we don't know is existing. But and it's a little bit scary, really, but it almost needs to be done. We need to watch people. And if you're not doing anything wrong, it should be, it's the same old story, shouldn't be an issue to you, but, I understand that personal, thing. People don't like to be watched, but things are being done, and it isn't things that get out into the public for, real,
Right.
for positive reasons. The other thing is do we know if this is an in-town, is this a Mishawaka person that owns this property, and have the neighbors talked to this person? And I don't know. Good. Well, I'm glad, that's another positive thing for me, that because so many of these properties are not owned by people that are in our community. And they're really hard to deal with.
Yes, they are.
At least we have someone here, by this individual being here, it shows me that he's concerned. And let's hope we all work together to get this thing taken care of and resolved. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Does
Joe.
anybody have Mr. Hicksball or Mr. Compton?
Matt?
Yes. Okay. Just want to check in with Madam Clerk. He's still not, or the petitioner's still not in?
I'm
Or
hearing noises.
that's a magic tune I hear.
It's better than seeing dead people.
Janet, I just sent you the link
Yeah,
for
he
that
is.
app.
He is up right now.
Okay.
I'm sure he's willing to wait until we finish with these folks if you'd like to.
Okay.
So
We'll take one more here and check in. If you could, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Scott DeVries. I live at 940 Lincoln Way East, and I am the owner of 423 and 427 West 7th Street. So I felt a little bad when I heard about these two problem buildings, and I was hoping they weren't mine, but, realized that they certainly were. And I'm coming here to address the council and my neighbors on the West End with a little bit of context about the buildings and my vision going forward with how to address some of the problems that you've identified.
Mr. DeFreeze, if I could interrupt just briefly, if you could just address the council so people online could hear the microphone.
Sure.
Once we turn our head, it's very difficult for the other folks remote to hear you. Thank you.
So I bought these properties in December of 2020. I was a university professor. I taught over at Bethel College and then down at Manchester University. And with some of the demographic decline that we've had here in the state of Indiana, and with COVID, my position was eliminated. And so I used some savings and some equity that I built up in my home over at 940 Lincoln Way East. We've lived here for a long time. In fact, I've been to a council meeting before. I think the last time I was in here, it was because my two daughters, Anna and Sophia, were part of the BeagerBots robotic team, and they had made an appearance all the way at the national competition, and they were honored here. So I say that because some of my daughter's glory can reflect a little bit on me, I suppose, but also to let you know that I'm a longtime resident of Mishawaka, and I'm really concerned about making sure that this city gets better and better. And so when I was deciding what to do, I landed on the idea of doing property management. I'd done that a little bit before as a graduate student when I bought my grandmother's house, and it was a two-flat out in New Jersey. So I'd had some experience doing it, and when I saw these properties over on the West End, I said, there's a lot of promise here. They're a little bit run down, they're a little bit dilapidated, but I believe there's some improvement here, and the person who was selling them was trying to get out and had a very specific business model, and the idea was to provide people who had criminal records with a place to live. And that's not my business model, but I understood from the seller that that's what was going on. And so some of those tenants were tenants that I inherited. With regard to the two properties, 423 West 7th was completely vacant when I bought it. It had no water service, its gas service had been retired, the electric was turned off. It was just sitting there vacant and getting decrepit. And so I've recently invested many thousands of dollars in improving the HVAC system there. I've had the water turned on. I've replumbed the apartments that are there and have managed to rent 2 of the 3 apartments after extensively renovating them. And I'm working on the third. In fact, I was there all day today, repointing some of the brick in the apartment upstairs. With 427, again, this was the one where some of those tenants I inherited. However, having seen some of the problems that the neighbors in the West End had identified, I realized that some of these tenants were not ideal for that place because of some of the behavior that I suspected was going on. And so several of them have either left or been evicted by me. It's been difficult, as someone mentioned, because of COVID, to act on any of these evictions in a speedy manner, but one was abandoned by someone who I believe was incarcerated. And so I was able to repossess that apartment and rent it, and it's now being lived in by a family with 2 or 3 children who are attending Mishawaka schools. In fact, 5 of the 6 apartments at 427, which some of you had mentioned as the problem property, are inhabited right now by families who have small children and who are going to the area schools. And again, that's a specific strategy that I've adopted because I feel like it's impossible to know how someone else is going to behave, and I hate being responsible for the behavior of others. But if I can identify tenants who have small children and families and are motivated to have a place to live that I can maintain in an ever-improving condition, that those are the types of tenants that I believe should be there. And so that's what I've tried to do with regard to the tenants. I've improved 3 of the 5 apartments in there already to make them more attractive to different types of tenants. And specifically, I've also changed the locks and gotten some security locks where you can electronically program them so that if tenants allow access to their building, make copies of keys, and then discover that it's someone that is there that they don't want, those codes can be quickly changed and the problem people will not have access anymore. In fact, I did one of those changes today. In general, I am at those 2 properties almost every day of the week. In fact, last week I was there 6 of the 7 days. Only on Sunday I didn't go over to either collect rent or meet with tenants, to take care of the outside. Today we turned on the gas with NIPSCO to 423, so I was there overseeing that improvement. And most of the time, I'm just fixing these apartments up either for the tenants themselves, if there's problems, or to try to get the vacant area rented. As I mentioned, I bought these properties back in December, and there were a number of problems with it. Everything from pest infestations to problems with leaking plumbing that was affecting the tenants on the downstairs, to obviously in 423, there was no heat or hot water over there. So I've done a lot of the investment that I've been doing in those buildings with regard to making them livable, to making them inhabitable, to improving their value with regard to real estate. However, some of these issues, whether your apartments are nice or not, if you have a tenant who's become a problem issue, or if there's visitors of those tenants, it doesn't matter how good the plumbing is or what my vision is, it's going to continue to be a problem. So it was recommended to me to sort of discuss a little bit what my vision for the future, you've heard a little bit of the context so far, but what my vision for the future for these 2 properties are. And the first thing is to install a laundromat. So I want to open a new business on the West End. My wife came up with the idea to call it the West End Laundry, to echo and perhaps cross-promote with the West End Bakery, which is a place that our family has gone to for the 6 months into the time that we've been here in town and discovered that it was there regularly. Even for some of these Bigerbad events, we would go there and get a dozen donuts and frequent that local business. Again, my concern is the city of Mishawaka and its improvement, and specifically to identify previously vacant buildings, invest in them, and open businesses there. Of course, then I will become a business owner in that area, and a lot of the concerns that are being expressed here are going to become my concerns. In fact, they already are. I see the opening of a laundromat as a service to the community. There's no laundromat in the area within a radius of 2 miles. But it will also bring a presence there where it's open for a long time with brightly lit signage and a constant presence on my part. Once I get things sort of turned around and renovated, having the laundromat there is going to require me to be there pretty regularly. But But most importantly, perhaps to address some of these concerns is, once I've invested this much money, and again, I've talked about some of the things I've done already to explain why perhaps I haven't installed a surveillance system of my own, but that is on the very short list of things that will be purchased. Because I own the two buildings together, I can set up a surveillance system where the alley, the space between the two, the frontage that looks over to St. Bavo's, and particularly the area that abuts 7th Street, which is what their addresses are, can be constantly surveilled, so that when there are issues, or if a drug deal is reported that's going down, or there's some other thing, we can identify who is the perpetrator of the criminal activity that's going on. As I said, I know that 5 of the 6 families in 427 are families, and I find it difficult to believe that they would be the ones who are behind this crime. But I should also mention to my neighbors and to the council that I have a contract with the Orkin Pest Control, and as I've mentioned, I do a lot of renovation there. So I'm inside of those apartments, sometimes announced, sometimes unannounced, to take care of something that most apartment buildings deal with, cockroaches and other types of pests. And I can say honestly that I haven't seen any evidence of the type of criminal activity that's being mentioned today inside those apartments. Drug paraphernalia, or perhaps, I don't know if they would be legal or illegal, but I haven't seen firearms or any of those types of things. And I've been in different parts of the apartments. In fact, I was in 2 of the 3 apartments in 423 today because we turned on the gas service. So again, that type of regular presence where I'm there with the Orkin contractor, or I'm there because of the laundromat, or I'm there because I'm doing renovations, is the type of thing where as soon as I see activity which I would think suspicious of criminal, then I would, as a landlord, be able to get rid of any of those tenants. So I think the main problem there are a lot of the visitors that are coming, or the people who are used to that part of town as a part of town where perhaps because of the history, because of the time from before I owned those areas, you can get away with doing this type of thing. And I'm, as much as I am able to, planning on putting a stop to that by increasing their surveillance with this video system, which is going to be part of the business that I plan to open, to continue my personal presence there. And again, my main goal in buying those buildings, other than finding a new livelihood for myself, was to improve a city that I've lived in for almost 20 years and that our family has really grown to love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Mr. DeFreeze, let me speak, Matt, if I can here.
Sure.
I think that, we all appreciate that you're investing in those properties and trying to improve the buildings. But I think, you've also commented that you were there during the day. I think maybe if you were to be there late at night and early in the morning, you might see what's happening. I was out there at 12:30 Saturday morning, and then again at 3 a.m. on Saturday morning with a police officer. And at 12:30, there was a party going on at 423. There were 2 individuals who basically tried to incite an argument and possibly a fight with a police officer. And across the street, in front of the vacant buildings, there were actually 4 men. 3 of them were intoxicated, and I believe that they had just come from the party that was going on in 423. So I think that, maybe you need to pop in there in the evenings as well, and you might see what's going on.
Again, that would be the idea. Again, I don't have 24 hours available in the day to be monitoring it, but that would certainly be the idea of having this surveillance system. And when these types of disturbances are reported, then the people who are guilty will be filmed, and that can be turned over to the police. I've been working with Detective Pfeiffer in the police department to try to identify who is actually behind many of these reports, and have sent him and been in communication with him with regard to who are the tenants in those buildings and where they're located, who's on the leases, and he's mentioned names to me, and I've been able to identify them as either visitors or people who are not on the leases.
Thank you, Mr. Belovich. Thank you, Dr. DeFreeze, for coming. I know it's not an easy thing to do, to come to a room half full of angry people that on a property that you own, but I do give you credit for having the courage to come here. I just have a couple questions regarding the 2 properties. You had mentioned that you had inherited a few tenants. So just if you could remind me of the two properties, how many units are there and how many are vacant?
423 has 3 apartments in the second floor. 427 is attached to a building on West Street, and that has a tenant, but he uses that just for storage. So 427 West 7th has 6 units in it.
6 units. And they're all occupied, other
So
than the
of those
storage?
9 units, 3 in 423 and 6 in 427, 8 of the 9 are occupied.
Okay. And that includes the one that's used for storage?
No, that would be then 9 of 10.
Okay. So there is one that you could sleep in overnight and check in?
There is. I
Okay.
wouldn't want
I-
to sleep there.
Okay. Just yet. So, and I
Not yet,
think,
anyway.
and I think that's my point, is that you have the option where they don't. And I really think that you're saying the right things, and you're the type of landlord that we would like to have on paper, in terms of having lived here, gonna open a business here. You visit the properties frequently. But I also know that, it's very difficult to control some of the ones that you've inherited and control the people that come over. In your leases, do you have a visitor limit in terms of how many visitors at one time he or she could have?
No, but there is language about criminal activity. So visitors come and then perpetuate criminal activity, that's grounds for eviction. Again, something that in the current climate is very difficult to do. But if a tenant is found to be responsible for a big house party that then resolves in criminal activity occurring outside, and it can be documented, then that gives me grounds for eviction. My problem is, if I've identified a tenant that I suspect of being party to some of that, it's just been extremely difficult to take any action with regard to trying to move forward. So I've always tried to take the approach of speaking to the individual tenants when I've become aware of an issue, and mentioning to them, look, this is in violation of the lease because you're having this event here. I become aware of it. There's criminal activity associated with it. Now that puts you liable for eviction.
So of the 8 that are currently residing there, how many of those are your tenants not inherited?
7 of the 8.
7 of the 8. Okay. So there's 1 resident that you inherited.
Correct.
Okay. And when they have issues, for example, if there was a party, would they call you or the police?
Sometimes they would call me. I haven't gotten calls about loud parties from any of the tenants to me.
Okay.
I've asked the town council to please keep me apprised of any violations or any criminal activity going on there, and I haven't gotten any word. In fact, I got a call from the legal attorney, whoever the town corporation has hired as an attorney,
Sure.
mentioning that this was going to be discussed tonight and that you would appreciate me being here. And, that's sort of the first that I've heard of anything. Again, as Mike points out, I'm not there. I'm usually there till 7 or 8 at night. I'm not there at midnight or 3 in the morning.
Well, if I could just make one recommendation, would be perhaps continue the dialogue with your neighbors, possibly attend Mr. Emmons's monthly meetings as well, perhaps join the West End Neighborhood Watch or Facebook group, and give you a pretty good idea, a good barometer of what's going on in that area. But again, I want to say thank you for coming this evening and allowing us to ask you some questions. Mr. Emmons has a few.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You'd mentioned that you've been working on the inside for the apartments in both buildings, 423, 427. The outside of the buildings are deplorable. I hate to say that. And that is a deterrent to the West End in that area. I would appreciate you putting some money into the outside of those buildings. That would dress it up, and that might deter some of the problems that we're talking about. I can't be 100% sure, but when you see a dilapidated building, that draws people, the wrong kind of people. Like the bakery, they remodeled that bakery and everything, and that is a growing business. I think if you want your business to grow as a landlord, you need to do the outside not just the inside. And I think you should make that a priority to get those two buildings in shape on the outside as well as on the inside. Because that area, the street, the curbing and everything has been redone. They're doing a nice facade on the outside. You can add to that by shaping up your two facilities.
I appreciate that comment, and I'm certainly aware of that. One of the main problems with both of the buildings is been water management with regard to rain and things like that. So sort of starting from the top, going down with regard to the outside. I've hired the Rain Drain Corporation to come in, and again, at no small expense, they are going to replace some of the fascia board, the gutters, the drainage system, to try to move it away now that we've got that renovation done on the outside with regard to the city sewage, trying to manage some of the precipitation that happens. So starting there, that seemed to me like the logical first step. Certainly with regard to the laundromat moving in, if it's an ugly space on the outside, it's not going to attract clients. And so the idea is going to be to add more windows to the front, get that ugly yellow siding off of the front, and put a sort of white cement type facade there, and then, touch up the painted brick that's there. So again, all of that is part of the plan that I have going forward for opening that business, hopefully within the next 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody participating remotely would like to make a comment? Seeing none on the remote side of things, I'll turn it over to Councilwoman DeMay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, you mentioned that there are some families there. Are these single moms? Are they moms with dads with kids? Can you tell me a little bit about the families that live there?
I'll go through them. There's a couple there with 3 young children who are married. That's one of them. There's another, the mother of a tenant that's upstairs is there with, I believe, a boyfriend and his 2 children. In the front, it's a couple who has a small baby. It's just a studio apartment, so there's really not much more room for them. And then in the upstairs is a mother with her teenage son who lives there, so that's a single mom with a son. And then next door to them is a couple, I'm not sure whether they're married, but they have 4 children who are living there with them. And then there's the one tenant in the basement who, it's not a family unit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DeMay. Anyone else? Mr. Compton?
One last comment, and Mr. DeFreeze, thank you for coming. And I had got an email that you may be here. That's kind of why I commented, to kind of see if you were. But thank you for coming. And to your neighbors, I know that this doesn't solve all the problems on the West End or in Mishawaka. If this property gets brought to the point where it's not a problem to you anymore. But I encourage you to work with Mr. DeFreeze, communicate with Mr. DeFreeze as well as the police as to what's going on in your neighborhood. I have been here for a few years now. If a problem property rises to the level of people coming to the council, I don't remember ever the property owner coming here and talking like this. It was always a problem with the property owner. How do we deal with someone who doesn't want to be dealt with and is just a problem? I'm encouraged that this will resolve, that Mr. DeFreeze will work with you folks to resolve this. But continue to monitor, continue to do the things that you're already doing for this and other properties and other things going on in Mishawaka. And thank you again for coming here. It's greatly appreciated.
Any other questions for Dr. DeFreeze? Thank you for coming this evening.
My name is Jeffrey Miller. I live at 321 West 7th Street. And other than our friends who own Riverbend Apparel in the downtown of the West End, my wife and son and I are some of the most affected people by the situation that's developed with Mr. DeVries' property. There's been a lot of talk about surveillance, about documenting things, about what the police are going to do. Well, I was asked by, via my wife, I was asked by a council member on Thursday to surveil for you. So, here is your documentation. These are all people who have been coming and going. They were not in our neighborhood within probably 3 to 6 months ago. They are swarming our neighborhood now. So, at the request of our councilman, I began to log occurrences on Friday. People in backpacks everywhere, always going to 427. Interesting. But then I've been told by the police via someone else who is a reputable source that people with grown adults with backpacks in our neighborhood, it's criminal, it's drugs, it's stolen goods. So I sat out all weekend. And I'd like to, I guess, submit this document to
The clerk, please.
Do you want a copy or do you have one?
Now, it's also indexed to video I've taken. I've stood out on our sidewalk while thugs, pure thugs, have walked by and stared me down. While people have driven by and looked at me on their scooters. They know who I am. They know where I live. I was asked to do this. I did this. I am doing the police's job. It is unacceptable. Mr. DeVries can go home. I cannot sleep. I sleep on the first floor of our 2-story house with our 40-pound dog because I want them coming for me first before they get to my son and my wife. I've heard talk here about training more police officers, better training for police officers. That is a long-term project. We are looking at a situation right here. If you don't get this corrected, that neighborhood, forget it. I mean, I've heard people up here talk about the grand causes of the crime. I mean, the only thing that wasn't mentioned was like the influence of Black Lives Matter and the Afghanistan withdrawal, basically. That doesn't matter. That doesn't count. That has no relevance. We've got to solve this problem now. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Mr. Miller, if you could come back, please. Mr. Emmons.
Yeah, I want to thank you and your wife. I spent some time, what was it, last Friday? Sitting on your front porch with your wife, talking, conversing about the problems that you're having and everything. And I was the one that mentioned, if you see activity, document it.
I do.
I didn't ask you to be a policeman, but I asked you and your wife.
I am no policeman.
No,
I have no training whatsoever.
No.
You asked us to do this.
Right.
I can provide video indexed to that document. Now, obviously, I didn't see anybody stab their woman or actually pass cocaine to someone else. But I'm not a police officer, and
No.
neither am I a detective.
Yeah. No,
But
I just
it's
asked.
more. It's more. Another thing I want to address. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've been told call the police. Okay, we got involved in this because when they closed off West Street to redo the sewers, they closed it off. One of these tenants, I can identify him by sight. I know exactly what vehicle they drive. Repeatedly was backing up and down the street at speed. So they would pull in to park. Then when they had to go somewhere, they just back up along the entire length of the block at about 30 to 40 miles per hour. I called the police a dozen times. They came out twice. There are children on the block, including all the precious children that he rents to, who could have been hit by this vehicle. The police never showed up. They showed up twice, granted. One time, they just went down there. Nobody was standing by the car, so they left, apparently. The second time, the person who drives this van actually, while I was talking to the police officer, came out to his van. Then the police went down and spoke to him. It only took a dozen calls to get a car driving at speed in reverse addressed. So I am making use of the police. They are failing us.
Mr. Emmons, do you have anything more to say?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I appreciate you documenting this and your wife's participation in this. And I explained to her that I will be monitoring that neighborhood, because I live in that neighborhood. I live on 13th Street, it's not right there.
13th Street is 6 blocks south
I
of us.
understand that, but I'm saying, I'm part of this neighborhood, the West End, Mr. Miller, and I will do whatever I can to help the situation. I just started, let's say, I met with your wife, I listened to what she had to say, we saw a few cars go down that day, and she mentioned that it was not a very active day that day. And then I went down and talked to the proprietor of the apparel shop, same day. I went across the street and talked with the parish secretary. I got involved once I knew.
That's why you're sitting there. You're supposed to be involved.
Yeah, and I want to be involved. And like I say, and as I expressed to your family and everybody else, take a little bit of time. We can't cure it overnight, but if we work on it, we'll get it done. Now, I can't say it's going to take 1 day, 2 days, but we've had success in another area on 6th Street where we had a big problem with the tenant. And it was a detriment into the area. But we finally got it. It took 12 years, but we got it, and we closed them down. Now, I'm not saying it's going to take 12 years to accomplish this situation, but we will work on it, and we'll get it done.
Okay.
And I appreciate what all you're doing. I really do.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Anyone else like to come forward? If you could, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Christy Miller, 321 West 7th. You just heard from my husband about the calls we've made to MPD. We were both raised to believe that 911 is for emergencies only. Somebody better be dying is what my mom always told me. So we use frequently the business line if it's not life-threatening, and we don't get a response, like ever. He's gotten 2. Of the dozen calls I've made, I've gotten 1, and that was for stolen property dumped on our lawn after a mugging down at 423. Okay? And that includes the time, the beginning of August, when a couple decided to trespass because our property has access both street and alley. People cut through all the time. We can't fence it. It's just not feasible. We've put up no trespassing and private property signs. And when we see people, we ask nicely to not use our property. It is ours. And I've been threatened. I had a pair, one of them carrying a knife, cuss me out, say I was gonna die, that my family was gonna die, and they were gonna set fire to our house. So I called MPD, and I was told they'd take a report and to let them know if anything bad happened. And that's it. Nothing else ever happened. The one time we did get that response for stolen property, the sergeant we talked to, when we brought up a lot of these issues, said, oh yeah, we know all about it. You know, stuff is happening behind the scenes. I strongly recommend you exercise your Second Amendment rights. What do I take from that? That the police can't do anything to protect us? Is that why they're not coming out? How do I protect my child? The police answer to somebody. Ultimately, the buck stops somewhere. Somebody's in charge. And whoever it is not doing their job. When residents live in this kind of fear, somebody's not doing their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Hazen?
If anybody's experienced that the Millers are, I would suggest, and we're going to ask you to do something else for us, write down when you call the police, write down what kind of response you got, and that we can definitely do something about right away. If you let us know the times, the dates, everything's on tape, we can figure out if they dispatched a car or why a car didn't come, and we can definitely look into that. You should not have no response at all. And I'm sorry you experienced that.
Check the 911 logs for last night and see if there was a response to the west end of the alley.
Do you know about what
Actually,
time?
excuse me, if you're going to speak, we need you at the podium, please. Thank you. Thank you. If you could just, again, state your name and address, please.
Jeffrey Miller, 321 West 7th Street. We're bringing our home son from his church youth group last night at 8:32. A car pulled down the alley ahead of us. This is the alley between West 7th and West 8th. So West Street is at the end, Spring is over here. St. Babos will be over here. So we were coming in this way. We live right about the middle of the block. There was a car ahead of us. And as frequently happens in his properties, they block the alleys. They just park down there, do their business, block the alley, the end of the alley. So at 8:32, I called 911, and because I've been told to call, to make this,
No, you
this
did the right
property
thing. You don't
obnoxious,
have to-
basically. So I called 911 at 8:32. I wasn't going back in the alley to see if the police ever showed up. I'm not going to go risk my life going back there to see if they ever showed up. But that's the call, 8:32, 911 call to the West 7th and West Street alley.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Miller and Mr. Hazen. Any other comments? Anyone else would like to come up and speak? I'll open it up to anybody that may be participating remotely. Would anybody that is participating remotely like to participate in the privilege of the floor? If you would like to, please unmute and state your name and address for the record, please. Hearing none, I will close the, oh, yes, Mr. Evans.
Yeah. John, Mark, both of you were at the meeting with at Mr. Payne's house the other night, and you had some comments to make that you've been there, you were part of the residence, your home, and that you bought it because of the West End and that, and you want to stay in the West End, but you can't put up with what's going on in that area. And also the business owners of the apparel shop. I talked with her, and she gave me information when I visited her shop, plus also at the meeting Thursday night. She expressed a lot of concerns that she had of having to lock her door during business hours and that, so that the wrong person doesn't come in when she's there by herself. And that's not a way a business should operate or expect to operate that way. You want customers to come in, you don't want to lock them out. And I was a business owner in the West End also. I owned a paint store over there. And I understand your concerns and everything. And like I say, we want to get to the bottom of it. We want everybody to be safe, not only in your business, but in your home, like the Millers. In your home, on your porch, in your backyard, whatever. You need to feel safe. And so we've got a problem that we've got to address, and we've got to fix it. And we will find a solution to fix the problem. I will work with you to get that problem solved. So if anybody else has a question or a concern, this is the time to address it. And again, I want to thank all of you. So, sure.
If you could just start by stating your name and address for the record, please.
John Bain, 721 West 10th Street. I have the distinct pleasure of having gunfire outside my house last week, and then the following day, a high-speed chase with a three-wheel vehicle right alongside the orange dots where they found the shell casings. Firing in the air. I don't make more of it than it is, but what concerns me is that I hear this down the street over here, the Millers over here. I mean, it is going all around, and Grove Street, and I believe somebody else had mentioned we've got some hot spots, serious hot spots. I want to mention that Grove Street and the West End are right along the river. They're very near downtown. I personally walk from my home to the Riverwalk, and I could visit everything else down there. So I want to paint a picture of what might happen. The Mark Bradleys, myself, the Janets, we all bail, we go. We're getting out of here. Who's moving in? Who's moving in on the Grove Streets when they see what's going on over there near the Riverwalk, where this town has spent a lot of money? Every single councilman on here has a vested interest in exactly what's going on not only near, obviously, the whole city. And you're right, it's going on everywhere. We can't deny that. I mean, it's nationwide, it's an epidemic. But we are in a very distinct, privileged position, you might even say, and we could probably find a way to have people come here and ask the council members, how did you do that? Well, what they did was they took care of it while it was young. They took it out by the roots before it got really deep in the soil. And that's all I have to say. I mean, this whole city has a lot to lose or gain by the West Ends, the Grove Streets, the Battelle Parks, the Central Parks, and that whole area. It's all very close to where a lot of money has been invested, and a lot has been asked to be invested. And along those lines, I would submit that if you're a property owner and you're going to open a retail establishment next to a problem property that you own, you're going to fail miserably. Who's going to go there except for 10 tenants, 9 tenants? Just a point I'd like to make. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. Any questions or comments for Mr. Baines?
Thank you, John.
Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for your work on social media. I'll open it up again to anyone in person. Anybody would like to participate in privilege of the floor? Anyone participating remotely would like to participate in privilege of the floor, please unmute and state your name and address for the record, please. Seeing none, I will close privilege of the floor and then try to find out where I am in the, to bring on that new petitioner.
Yes, we have the unfinished business of Resolution 2021-21, and I would say we probably need a motion to bring it back onto the floor.
So moved. If the petitioner's ready, I'll make that motion.
Mr. Compton made that motion. Anyone? Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMaid?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Motion to put back on the agenda passes 8-0. Resolution R 2021-21, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 318 and 320 West Cleveland Road, Granger, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to remove restrictions. I'm sorry. No, it's not. It's a use variance to allow dog grooming and cat boarding at 318 and 320 West Cleveland Road for Gordon's Grooming.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a public hearing on Resolution R 2021-21. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to say that again this evening, but here we are. Anyone wishing to speak, I'll open it up to anyone in person, which I know there probably isn't, and then I will open up to anyone participating remotely. Is there anyone here presently that would like to speak in favor of this resolution? Seeing none, anyone participating remotely would like to participate and speak in favor of Resolution 2021-21. Now would be the time for the petitioner that joined us.
That would be you, Mark.
Yeah, my name is,
There we go.
my name is Mark Shea.
Thank you.
I live at 466 South Prospect Avenue in Elmhurst, Illinois. And my family owns Centennial Place and my tenant is Gordon's Groomers, who's asking for the variance to perform grooming and boarding services in their 2 units that they lease from us at 318 and 320 West Cleveland. Gordon's has been with us as a tenant for 2 years. They sell retail pet supplies as well as perform services for dog grooming today, and they'd like to expand into cat grooming in a separate facility, 318, as well as board cats, only cats indoors. There'll be no outside activity in either space, and they'd like to do that as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Shea, and thank you for your patience this evening as we work through some other items and circling back to presents. Any questions or comments for Mr. Shea? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else participating remotely that would like to speak in favor of Resolution R 2021-21? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to Resolution R 2021-21?
Dash 21.
Seeing none, is there anyone participating remotely that would like to speak in opposition to Resolution R 2021-21? Seeing none, are there any council members that would like to speak? I'll call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, will you please pull the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksenbach?
Yes.
Resolution passes 8-0. And if I could please thank my Chief Deputy Raven for working so diligently with Mr. Shea to getting back on the agenda for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Raven. Please tell her thanks as well.
She's still on.
Unfinished business, I'm seeing none. New business? Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Again, I'd like to acknowledge that I will be starting my monthly meetings again. I've been holding them for 17 years, missing last year because of the pandemic. So hopefully we'll continue these monthly meetings with guest speakers that are interested for the community and to solve some of the problems that occur in our district or in the city. And like I say, I try to invite city officials, whatever that we need to address situations. And I say, I've been doing it for 17 years, and I'd have done it for 18 years if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So we're going to be honored with the mayor to give a synopsis of the State of the City address from last year, and then he'll be there available to answer any questions that the community has. So I invite you all to be there. It starts at 7 o'clock at St. Babel's. Come in from the parking lot. And like I say, the State of the City will the about hour and a half, because it'll be a condensed version, and then there'll be time to answer any questions and concerns that the public has. And then we'll have them every month. This is on the 4th Thursday. After that, it'll be on the 3rd Thursday, every month except for December because of the holidays. And we've already got one lined up for October, which is Mr. Ken Prince will be talking about the development in the city of Mishawaka and downtown and the surrounding area. So every month we try to have something that's very pertinent to the citizens of Mishawaka, and I encourage you to attend. And we always have fresh donuts from the West End Bakery. So look forward to seeing you come Thursday, 7 o'clock. I'm there around at 6:30. The door's open so come early, get a good seat, and look forward to seeing all of you there. Again, thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for your participation in solving this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Thank you for your continued efforts and reconvening those neighborhood meetings. I never thought I'd miss refreshments will be served from West End for a year more than I have this past year. So thank you for picking that back up and all you do. And as I had mentioned earlier, If you can't attend, Mr. Emmons, you guys are all, anybody is welcome to attend our Neighborhood Watch meeting in Twin Branch, and that's, once the school opens up, we've been hosting it outside and under the pavilion at Twin Branch Park. Also have a speaker, and we have Lieutenant Ruppert also in attendance to cover local crimes that have occurred in the last month. You guys are all welcome to join as well. I unfortunately do not have West End Donuts, but we will have some refreshments and desserts of the like. All are welcome, and anything else? Yes, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, I just want to remind the council and everyone that our meetings in October will be October 11th and October 25th, and that next Monday, September 27th at 5:30 PM, we will have the American Rescue Plan informational meeting right here at City Hall.
Thank you very much. Anybody participating remotely have any comments to add under new business? No? If there's no further business to come before the council, then a motion to adjourn is in order.
I've got 5:30.
So moved.